I'd like to call this meeting to order. Mary Lee Thoreau.
Present.
Thompson.
Here.
Howard.
Here.
Harris.
Yes.
Garcia.
Here. I'd like to welcome all in attendance, and I'd also like to welcome all those who will be joining us by live stream. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I believe we have a young lady here by the name of Jolene Justice who wishes to address all in attendance. She will be addressing mental health first aid. Charlie.
Depression, anxiety, OCD, ADHD, and ODD. Yes, I know these terms are ones that make people nervous because people do not understand the acronyms, but they are all just examples of what I wanted to share. I would like to thank you all for your time and consideration for my presentation. I'm coming to you with information that I would believe that would assist our law enforcement officers and EMS, but also our community at large. Today, mental health conditions are on the rise, leading into coping skills that the public then get to see because of the display of unsafe behaviors. Our law enforcement officers must respond to in our first on scene. When our officers are uncertain whether it is truly a medical or mental health condition, rather than a disturbance or illegal behavior. I'm not saying that the two cannot go hand in hand, but seeing and understanding with training the difference of the two can be beneficial in whether a person should go to medical treatment first or simply be arrested. Within Goodland and Sherman County, not only is the drug activity increasing, but so is the mental illness risk. 90% of most of the drug addicts and alcoholics are suffering from an undiagnosed illness or trauma they have endured. I speak for experience on mental illness. My daughter, who's now 15, just got diagnosed with autism and newborn, and we just found out a week and a half ago she has this multi-semester difference. That is a cross between Down syndrome and autism, and it is from birth. So the schools have seen it, our law enforcement has seen it, and our EMS. And I'm not saying that they were all terrible experiences, but there were some that were horrifying and traumatic. But a lot of it could have been curbed with proper training. And I was told on some occasions that I should keep her or move her out of the county because she didn't belong there. I believe with the knowledge which we know is power, we can decrease the stigma and lack of understanding of mental illness and just not being compliant with the law. Also with this, the approach in talking, empathy, and learning of the person being handled by our law enforcement officers. Attached, which you guys all have, the county commission that didn't occur, the school board, I actually want to present to you guys at some time. Attached, you will find information on the CIT training, which is crisis intervention team. First aid mental health for adults and juvenile, and it is important to do both, not just one. And the PACE program by Dr. Hughes, which teaches the participants of that program how to de-escalate with proper training and find out information how to get information and make them comfortable and de-escalated. With all that information, as well as 2 letters explaining situations, how it was used, one being by a law enforcement officer in Overland Park. I have reached out to High Plains Mental Health, where they provide mental health first aid free, and have come to our EMS and LEO agencies to provide the training. CIT training will be beneficial for all EMS and LEOs. There are 2 types of training. The EMS would have the option to be involved in an 8-hour training through KDAP, so it's just a brief synopsis of, how to do it. And that's with the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability, and it is free. The law enforcement officers training is actually a 40-hour training module that is provided by the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Facility, and I have reached out to them, and they said that if there's enough interest that they would come out here to do it instead of pulling from our force to send them out there. So, but we would have to pay for the training, but it would also save on lodging and travel.
So let me stop you right there, Charlie, and just before I forget the question. So, having said that, I think you are the director of several counties, 18. So if you would reach out to those particular counties and inform them of basically the training that would be going on here, so you would draw from those departments as well?
The training for CIT and mental health first aid actually has to go within a department. I do know that I spoke to a couple of our sheriffs, and I know that they are trying to push for it to be mandatory across the state for the Kansas Sheriff's Association for the CIT and mental health first aid. Because those actually have to be within a department. I can't actually arrange it, but I do know that the Kansas law enforcement training, they said that they would come to Goodland, and I spoke to Colby and Thomas County, and then some of our other surrounding counties, and they said if we were to get it out here, they would be very interested in participating in the training, because they do not want to pull from their officers and send them all the way to Kansas City, or like Johnson County, they have it, like if you were to get a trainer, because you can get one trained to facilitate the trainings, and then you can hold it here and then actually make money off of it to provide more training or put it into a training fund for other. The PACE program, I have the trainers in this program available to train and willing to come to them to do this, or I can give you the thumb drive that I have that has the training, or you can buy the CDs on that are, it's just $300 and it's just sitting through the training and watching it. In closing, the other thing I did find out, I don't know if it's something that the county and the city would consider, is, I don't know, just putting on Facebook, but I just shared it today. The Today Show actually had a program where, instead of when law enforcement show up on a scene and it's really escalated and helping them decipher what it is, they have a vehicle similar to our first response vehicle, the gray van, and they have a paramedic and a therapist that actually goes on the call. So if you were to just have a therapist and paramedic on call specific for that, they actually go to it and get it handled, and then either they get arrested or get sent off to medical treatment. And I know I spoke to High Plains and a couple other places, and they'd be willing to have someone on call because they already have the number of them. And how much you still High Plains doesn't always work very well. So having those kind of people on call is also very good. So as I said, in closing, as I explained, it would be a great asset for our law enforcement and EMS, but truly to our community because of the issue of mental health. And I know that my daughter is normal. This would help with decreasing incarcerations, legal fees, and hours on our agencies with protect all of us into topic crisis. Again, thank you all for your time and consideration. I would really like to see these schools as a mandatory training because the fact it would really help in very escalated situations. I know that my daughter just had me. Right now it's quiet, but and I really believe that it would be better for our community when we see and have it involved in a mental crisis and not the encounters that so many of us in our community have endured with the lack of knowledge.
Thank you. Any questions for Charlie? Thanks so much.
Yep, thank you.
We move on to item number 3. The way I will move into this, I will first call the county commission to call the meeting to order, and then I will call on Jessica to call the school board to order. So, guys? Okay. Jessica? Thank you. This particular time, we will be discussing item number C, Neighborhood Revitalization Plan discussion. Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioners, welcome everyone. I would actually defer to Rochelle and the County Commission. I know that the city, county, and school board all jointly enter into the Neighborhood Revitalization Plan at this current time. That plan is set to expire at the end of December 2020. So I suppose we need to have discussion on amendments, changes, or renewal, extension, or termination at this time. So.
Do I have to be here at the mic, or can I go up here, because I hate to have my back to these people? Does it matter?
Well, wherever you go, if you take the mic with
Okay,
you,
okay.
that would be fine. You would like to wander.
That way I'm not here. The NRP expires at the end of this year, and it's been a joint agreement with the city, county, and the school board. And there's usually the economic development director is the one that writes the plan. So since we don't have one of those, I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention that we need to be thinking about this. And if there's any changes we want to make to the plan, there's some verbiage changes I want changed that are just kind of, it still refers to in some spots as a 10-year plan, and it's really 5 years, and, you know, little things like that. Other things I think that we need to discuss, which is going to be an unpopular thing to talk about, but in a couple years, we're going to see ag values go down significantly, and with that tax lid, it's going to drastically affect the city, the county and the school board's budget ability. And I'm not an expert on the tax lid, but they use the values and the amount of money that people need for budgets to get a mill levy. And when the value, right now we've, typically see values go up because our residential market's good and our ag land's been going up. So we're able to keep our mill levy lower. But once our value starts going down, you can't raise it more than the consumer price index, which is like 1.8%, which you don't want to raise it, but I just want people to be aware that that is something that we're going to see in a few years. And I didn't get any numbers to see how much money we get back on a yearly basis for rebates, but we might want to just have that in the back of our mind as we're thinking about this. Also, it takes at least 3 months for the state attorney general's office to approve our plan. So, and I don't know if they're working on a full-time basis yet with COVID. So this is something that we probably need to get put together in the next couple months so that we can get it sent off. And I honestly, I don't know how that works. So I'm the one who administers the plan. So I don't know how it gets to the state attorney's office or anything, but I just know we have to give it to them, and then it takes at least 3 months before they approve it or deny it or whatever it is they do. So I just wanted everybody to get a chance to look at the plan. If there's anything you guys see that needs to be changed, I think Charles, at the county attorney, is the one that wrote this plan. It's my understanding. So we can give him the information and he can reword it or whatever needs to be done. And I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with the plan, neighborhood revitalization plan, or school board. So if any of you want to, further explanation what it is, please let me know. And another thing I want to bring up is we've had this plan in this county for years. I don't know how many years, probably 8. And I still get numerous people on a yearly basis that put something up new that didn't know it existed. And so I feel like somehow we need to do a better job letting people know that it exists, whether it's give the plan when somebody gets a building permit or I don't know what the answer is, but something. Because then they're mad at me because they didn't know about it, and I would have given it to them if I would have known they were gonna build something. Because they have to apply for it before they start the project is kind of the kicker. And some of the wording in the plan I feel is confusing. If I think it's confusing, I can't imagine how the general public sees it. So just keep that in mind, and if you guys will look at it and however you want to rewrite it. Any questions?
Would you be able to give us a proposal with your draft, what you think you'd like to see reworded?
Yeah.
Could you do that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like that'd be a good start.
Okay. Most of my stuff I have is just, like I said, some of the verbiage that 10-year plan is taken out. There's part 8B and 3 instead of A, B, C, you know, some of that stuff. It's not very clear about, in some places it says you have to apply before you do anything, groundwork or anything. And then there's another spot that says kind of, well, you're at your own risk if you've started the project and then apply. So it's kind of vague. It doesn't spell it out very well. Someone, when they do a project, when they're done, they have to give us their construction costs. And some people are confused exactly what that means. Some people give me a folder like this, and some give me a handwritten note of what they say they spent. So I think it needs to be more clarification on that end. Let me think.
If we want to pause just
Yeah,
a minute,
we're
I
trying to
believe.
get the other commissioner.
Oh, sorry.
Dial 9 on this line. Have to dial the 9 before you dial the 1.
Rochelle, while he's trying to get it done.
9 and then 1.
I just want the public to make sure they understand on the tax from the land going down, the county commission nor the appraiser has anything to do with that, that's set with the state. Because we always get questioned on that. So,
Yeah, ag values is something we have the only thing that we control in our office is if we look at it with aerial photography, which is kind of like that map, and we determine is it grass, dry land, or irrigation. And if it's irrigation, we get the water reports from the state that tells us how much water is being applied, acres per acre for feet, and then all the values are set by the state. They give us the values.
So you know that 2 years atmosphere evaluation?
So they do an 8-year average, which lags 2 years. So we know what's within the 8-year average for, say, the 2020 values. And there's a couple of high years in there. And when those drop off, which I think is going to be 2 to 3 years, we'll probably see our ag values cut at least in half. And we've been seeing 30–40% increase in ag values in the last probably 4 years. So we're going to see a significant drop in ag values, which is majority of our value, which sounds great if you're a farmer, you know, your taxes sound like they're going to go down, but what happens usually is, you know, everybody still has a budget to maintain, so it's just a cut. It's not cutting taxes, it's shifting. It just shifts the burden to a different classification. So
it's based on use value, so
right.
high grain prices may come up now, it's going to go down.
And we have a whole packet we get from the state if anybody wants any information on ag values. I got all kinds of stuff I can give you on that. And we're even in a region. We're in the Northwest region, which is 8 counties. So they look at the data from 8 counties to determine the ag values. So it's one of those things where we fight every year to keep ag use values. Eastern Kansas, especially Northeast Kansas, they would love for us to be at market value, which if anybody knows anybody in Nebraska that owns ag land, your ag taxes will go up probably 10 times of what they are now. So we fight to keep those at ag use every year. And a lot about the formula is not, they don't just give me, you know, they won't tell me what the formula is and what the numbers are. A lot of it is confidential information because when the farmer fills out a survey with income and expense information, that is not public and I'm not considered public, you know, I don't get it either. So a lot of I get the bottom end of the value. Here's the value for these soils. So a lot of it, I don't know exactly where they get the numbers either, but I get some information.
So
And how long before these values start to go down, you say?
I don't know, I would say 2 to 3 years. So, probably 2023.
And you're saying specifically the ag value?
Yeah, it's just ag. Everything else we do is market value, so it's based off of what things are selling for. And we want to be within 10% of a sale price on every other classification of property except for ag. And we're actually fortunate we don't have a lot of oil in this county. One of my other counties just lost 60% of their oil value, lost $6 million of assessed value. So
what inference is drawn from a potential ag value decrease as it relates to this plan? Are you saying that with that potential decrease that the NRP is potentially something that shouldn't be offered or should be
I'm just saying
amended in some way?
I don't have the data here. I was in Rollins today and I asked my treasurer how much money we get back on the NRP, which they don't have near the people in their plan that we do. And in 19, we gave back $300,000 in rebates. Well, if we know in a couple years that we're going to have a big problem meeting our budget requirements and we're giving back $300,000, I mean, in their case, they have a 10-year plan. So it's like maybe not offer, and we have 5 here. So I don't know, I don't know what to do. I mean, honestly, I'm just throwing that out there. It might be something where we might want to make it so that it's not getting back as much percentage or as many years or leave it the same. I mean, it doesn't affect me personally. It's just, I know some.
I think this plan's 5 years at 90%, isn't it? It used to be 10 years and then.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I get the plans confused, but I have the plan with me.
Yeah, it's 1 through 5
It
years
used
of
to be-
90%.
Used to be different, a lot different for commercial versus residential, but, yeah, so it's 90% rebate back for the whole 5 years.
We kind of, I think the discussion was we all wanted to give back as fast as we could, more building when we passed that.
Yeah.
And would you say people are using it and you said you have, we need to get the word out more, is what you said.
Yeah, I think there are people that use it. I seem to have the same people that use it over and over. A lot of people are building stuff that don't know about it. And I always hate that because it's like, you know, I feel like you shouldn't get penalized because you didn't know if it was offered, when it could be thousands, you know, 5 years is usually thousands and thousands of dollars. Some other things I think we need to talk about, or, you know, you guys need to decide is how many applications per year on a property are we going to allow? It gets really confusing when you have people that apply for 3 or 4 different projects, and it's not always as easy as assigning. I assign one value to the property. It doesn't necessarily mean that when I look at what the value, like a cost value is on each building, it may not add up to the total building because I didn't use cost as the value method. So how many projects do we want to allow per property per year is something we need to think about. And right now it's we have a 10-day grace period for people that we allow them to pay their taxes late if they get a rebate. I don't have any rebates and I have to pay my taxes on time. So I feel like if you're somebody getting money back, you should be paying on time. Yeah. I mean, I just feel like.
We had a discussion
Yeah.
where it used to be.
Well, they wanted to make it 30 days and we got it to 10.
Yeah, because
That was right when I started.
30, and I agree. I mean, if you can afford to build a remodel, you can afford to pay your taxes.
And it becomes a big problem with the treasurer's office who disperses the money out to all the people that get money. Because after you pay your taxes, after it's paid in full, I think she has 30 days to get you a rebate check. Well, when she's doing all her disbursements and then you have this 10-day delay in there, you know, this plan is a lot of paperwork that no one will ever realize how much paperwork it is. I also think it needs to be in the plan, which a lot of counties have this in the plan, that if you're going to appeal your value, you should do it at informal time and not at tax time. Everybody has the right to appeal their properties once a year. You can do it either when you get your notice, which there's no money you have to pay at that time, or when you get your, or when you pay your taxes. When you pay your taxes, you have to pay your taxes. And it's not always as easy as assigning. I think when you look at what the value is on each building, it may not add up to the total building because I didn't use cost as the value method. So the reason why this is important is if you're someone that pays your taxes in full, technically you should get your rebate back in 30 days. Well, if I set your value, you don't like it, you go on to small claims, you don't like it, you go on to the Board of Tax Appeals, you go to District Court, Court of Appeals, Kansas Supreme Court. Board of Tax Appeals is about 2 to 3 years out so far on hearings. Well, and Charles and I have a little different opinion on this. I actually was in another county that we had this issue, and I contacted the State Attorney General's office, and it's like, so if we give a rebate back based on the current value and it gets lowered, then we have to depend on this person to give the rebate money back. And the State Attorney General's office at that time had told me that you do not pay out a rebate until the appeal is finalized. Well, if you go to the Board of Tax Appeals and it takes you 2 to 3 years, then we have this money hanging out there where the treasurer can't balance, and so, yeah. So that's something I think and if you're appealing, technically you're appealing the value, but most people appeal their taxes, you know. It's just kind of our nature to not want to pay taxes. I don't want to either. But if you're truly concerned about the value, then the informal time is when you should come in anyway. And that also, if you come in at an informal time, we haven't certified our values to the state. There's been no mill levy set, so it doesn't have as many consequences to agencies as when somebody pays under protest. Right now, we have some big appeals going on with a company that has multi-million-dollar properties going back 18, 19, and 20, and we still haven't had our BOTA hearing. If they win, they will get back, if they get what they want, I mean, we will be paying back hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, and plus we have to pay them interest, even though it's not our fault we haven't had the hearing yet. So it's something that we all, you know, all three of us will have to cough up our share of the money, and whoever else is in the mill levy for those kind of situations. So if we have it that they come in at an informal time, and if there's any issues, we can take care of it right then, and then it's done before it affects everybody else. So
It would appear to me that even if all the stipulations and provisions that you've alluded to were met, I think the most important question to the school district, the county, and the city, if your projections are right, and they hit in 2023, is do we renew this plan for 5 years, or knowing that this monster is coming at us, do we just renew it for 3? I mean, that's something that, you know, we all have to think about.
Or can we handle it through the application process? And just renew it?
I don't know. You know, I think, you know, I've learned, and I do a lot of contracts, but that the more clarified your stipulations are when we go into it, the better off you are. I mean, if you're going to renew this, I mean, you're better off by doing it 3 years rather than being caught in some of a legal debate.
Right.
What does the county think?
I'd agree. If we know it's coming, and it will have some effect.
what do you mean by the application process?
It sounds like there's some concern for property. Applications for one per property instead of ongoing. Is there ways we can clean up the process and not necessarily, until we're in 3 years and last year, 2 years ago, I think, whenever we did this, it was kind of a helter-skelter, and everybody's like, oh, we thought it was 10 years or 5 years.
And we don't have to leave it at 90% either.
Huh?
We can reduce the percentage too.
I guess I thought, was it in a prior one that it scaled, went 90, 70, 50?
There's some of those out there,
Yeah, that was a
but
previous
we
one.
wanted it neat.
Ours was a previous one.
Kevin?
If I can interject real quick, I was on county commission when we first did this. And we got city and county
years together, back in the early 2000s, 2004, somewhere like that. And our economy wasn't very good. So we wanted how to stimulate growth. And this rebate we're talking about is a rebate on new projects, not on existing land or houses or whatever. So it's we pay a rebate back on people who are investing back in our community now. And I think that's always important to do so. If we're encouraging people to grow our community, we're giving them incentive to do that. And that's what the original purpose was. And that's how the group came together trying to make this work back in a time where economic times weren't very good with it going.
Yeah.
So, as far as the process, we always made it so you had to always have your taxes paid at due date. We didn't give any allowance there, and the form was fairly easy. It made it a bit more complicated since then, but it was 90. Each year was like 10%, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, all the way up to 10 years. So I'm sure it's evolved to different things, but from my point of view, I hope you guys look at it very positive and think about it, help our community to grow, bring new people into our community, maybe look to do some things. So obviously some fine tuning needs to be done, it sounds like, but that's a little bit of the history of how it works out. So.
But the history of that also was, the reason this is called a neighborhood revitalization is so that working people in your community paying taxes could remodel and afford the taxes that refund, and not just for communities.
Right. So many people, when a business comes to town, say, big business comes to town, we give them more incentives, it seems like. Well, everybody says, well, how about me when I put my garage up or do a move on my house? We're like it, my rebate. And that's what this thing is about, so that rebates or incentives are given to everybody across the board, no matter whether you're $1 million person or $10,000 person. So we're trying to even the playing field across the board for every resident in our term county. So that's the reason why this program was put together. We try to let everybody participate as opposed to the big boys and such.
John Topliff, are you listening to all of this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any?
Well, let me weigh in. The reason that we have this is to encourage investment, and we compared ourselves to Thomas County, and Thomas County actually has the same program we have right now. But this is to encourage economic development, and as the county attorney weighed in back when we were doing this, he said without it, you're going to be left in the dust. And if you look at what's going on over at Colby, you look at what's going on in Goodland, it's a little bit frightening. And to go backwards and to say we're not going to do this anymore because we can't afford to is not looking far down the road. And it's always the age-old question: do people build this without the program? I don't know. But do you want to take that chance? I don't know. Without growth in the community, we're finished. And that's the thing that scares me the most is when we talk about going backwards. Where are we going to go backwards? So, like the previous commission wanted to do, plow up Highway 24, turn it into a gravel road, or not have the nursing home, or where did you start going backwards and where do you stop?
I don't know, John. I don't think the previous commission had any of those plans. I've never heard that before, and I was on that commission. This is my third term. So I disagree with that statement.
But the thing about this talk is that, we're going to renew the plan or not renew the plan. You can alter the plan, but whatever we do, we've got to get this done and do it pretty soon.
Well, I think something, Rochelle has brought some good things to the table, some things that didn't get caught when we signed it before.
Just clean it up.
Yeah, we need to clean it up and then bring it back and all go through it again and see if there's anything. And during that time, if somebody else has some ideas, get a hold of Charles. Let's get all the ideas in there before we bring it back to the table.
I agree with you.
The 10-day grace period, that was brought about because there was a guy that had a property in the program, and they were out of town. They came back into town, paid their taxes, didn't know that about they paid them, they were 2 days late, and they were thrown out of the program. Well, is that really fair to them?
Yep. They get their tax statement just like everybody else.
Well, again, you have to go back and ask yourself, are we a government of the people, for the people, by the people? Or are we a government to the?
I'd say we're for the people, not for one person. So if we're gonna change the rules for one person who couldn't abide by the law, then we're screwing ourselves here, I think.
So do we want to have people submit ideas?
Well, I would recommend that, each commission, when they meet like the school board and the county, that at some point you kind of discuss it and kind of expound on it and see what your idea is, and then we meet again. This thing expires at the end of this year, right?
Yes.
So the quicker that we can come to an agreement and make all the addendums to it, if there's going to be some, then, we get back together again and formally vote on the plan and move forward. So,
And like I said, usually before COVID, it would take 3 months to get the plan approved. So I think if we submit it, at least by September, we should know something by the first of the year to know what to do from there on.
Well, if you send us your recommendations,
Okay.
we can look at them at our next meeting.
Yeah.
We can talk about anything and we can have it back
Sounds
to
good.
you sooner than later.
And-
Sure.
and most of my-
September's almost too far.
I
I agree.
Most of my stuff is just the wording of it,
Yeah, and
because
that's perfect. If you send that.
just
to
trying to
us,
get it
we'll
better
Oh,
look at
worded.
it, and we can get back together.
Yeah, I think if you would, send that to all of us so that we're all working
Sounds
off
good.
the same wording, the same thing.
I'll send it to Andrew and Bill.
And if we think of any policy changes within the plan, then we can address it next time.
And just to be clear, I have no opinion if we keep the plan or not. I just want the wording changed so that it's easier and everybody can understand it easier and
I don't
just.
think anybody here wants to see the plan go away.
So, yeah.
We just
Well,
want
that's
to
what
clean
John
it up,
thought, but-
fine tune it,
Yeah.
and make it right.
You gotta look at this plan, especially on somebody that's coming in to build a new business. They buy a piece of property, that property was vacant, it's tax money that we're giving back that we never collected anyway.
Yeah, and most people that are, if
It's
you're,
money we never had,
yeah.
and that's how you have to look at that part of it.
And if you're a new business like the hotel, there's better incentives out there than neighborhood revitalization. So when we get a new economic development person, they're gonna be able to give them all these plans and then they can figure out which one's gonna be best for them and for the county, so, yeah.
Starting this new board, the 501c3 board, I mean, we're gonna have to have a portfolio of benefits and things in there. So I mean, this is all gonna be part of that.
And we did get rid of the cap, I don't know how many plans ago, but there is no cap on how much you can improve a property, which I think has been a big incentive to people. Before it was at,
Yeah, we're on-
say you spent $1 million, it capped at 250,000. So we at least, we have that in there, so you can build as big a project as you want and still get the incentives off of that whole thing, so I think that's a good thing. So,
school board okay with that?
We're great.
Yeah, right. County, city, any other thoughts?
well,
Okay.
I will email my stuff to you guys and to Andrew and to Bill, and then go for, if you guys have any questions, if my stuff doesn't make sense, let me know. Okay, thanks.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. We bring the hearing of the neighborhood revitalization to an end, so you are more than glad to stay or disband or whatever, you choose to do.
Terry, you say second to adjourn, all in favor?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. So we move on to item number 4, joint city and county committee, item A, economic development, CBD Chamber of Commerce discussion. All right, so Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. You do all have in your agenda packets the board applicants received. I did also email those out to the county as well. I think that was the plan for this meeting. We did not receive any more today, so what went out to you on Thursday was what went out, was what's been received. We have 11 applicants for that board. I don't know if you prefer that I read them or just
Sure.
if we want to go on with the discussion, but the applicants we have are Stephen West, Jackie Livengood, Bill Bierman, Ben Shears, Janelle Miller, Carol McClure, Amy Cedarstrom, Jessica Cole, Anthony Spomer, Jerry Fairbanks, Jennifer House. So, I know obviously that the county may have kind of had a separate process, but those are the names that we received. So, again, I think the intent of this discussion was for us to identify the 6 board members, so I defer to either board as to where you want to take that discussion from here.
I will open up the discussion on the city commission. See what you think of these names. So it looks like Bill Bierman, Ben Shears, Janelle, Carol McClure, Amy Cedarstrom, Jessica Cole, Anthony Spomer, Jerry Fairbanks, Jennifer House, Steve West, and Jackie Lively.
I mean, it's a good list of names.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys gotten any other names on your list? I'm not, how do we, do we want to, like the county, pick people who live in the county, the city pick people who live in the city, does it matter?
I don't think it
It's all kind of
matters.
at large, however we want to.
Anybody from the outlying communities, Edson, Canarado, you know, if they were interested, they would have applied.
Yeah.
That was what I was concerned with, and that's okay. Rochelle has voiced the interest in being on that board,
Mm-hmm.
so.
That's right. We didn't put Rochelle's name in.
Other than that, I think we're covered. How do you want to do this?
Are you guys working on a different list, and are there any duplicates in the same name?
Oh, there's a lot of duplicates. Yeah.
We'll go ahead and read the list, we'll know what we have.
We had Steve West, Jennifer House, Amy Cedarstrom, Jennifer Sanderson, Rochelle Stanley, Ben Shears. Now, a lot of these names, you know, we've thrown back and forth, so
Sure.
I just jotted some stuff down here. We weren't actually taking applications. That was, you guys kind of initiated that, so that's okay.
We're the city, we love paperwork.
Absolutely. So I think we got a pretty good list to choose from. And to refresh everybody's memory, we're going to choose 6, and that group will choose 1.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as I'm concerned, they can choose their pick off of the list or somebody entirely different. That's up to them.
Yeah. That will be up to them.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll start off. I would nominate Rochelle Stanley.
I'll second it.
Any discussion, concerns?
So, just to be clear, so the county right now is picking R3?
Pick an R3.
Okay.
We just go back and forth.
Well, we need to talk. I mean, if we see a problem or an issue, let's talk about it now, you know?
I guess, the only, I mean, we just got a great list of names, is, any of them would do well, I think, reading some of the applications and some of the things that people had, written, one of the things that stood out is, the schools, that how much of an impact what happens in development of the city and the county impacts their revenue, so I think whether it's Ben or Bill or Jessica, we need one of, I think any one of those 3 would do as well.
Well, I think Ben Shears is kind of he's not really public schools.
Right, I think.
So that's a separate deal, and I think he would be good on the board.
I think he's tied in closely enough with the USD 352 that he he would, Bill and him work closely together, and with other board members, I think he would be the voice for them too. I think this is important to have one of those on the 6 or 7 represented.
I think I would nominate Steve West on the city side. Anybody has concerns? Looks like it was the only banker that we had, apply, so I would nominate him. Any concerns?
Hey, back to Rochelle, just to throw it out, do you see any conflict of interest because she is employed by the county? Anybody got a problem with that, or?
We talked to the county attorney, he said there shouldn't be a problem.
Right.
I just wanted to do it because typically economic development directors work really closely with our office when they get new projects and stuff. And so I just thought it would be important to find someone that's willing to work with us, because I've worked in communities where they won't work with us, and it makes it really difficult to get new projects going when we have a conflict.
John, any concerns?
Nope. No concerns here.
Amy Cedarstrom.
I think Amy would be great.
Okay.
I would say Jennifer House, I think would be a good one, especially with her position with the Northwest Kansas Community Foundation. She could be a good person to have on there.
Any concerns, guys? Jennifer House? JD?
No.
We've had some differences of opinions on, so the CVB board has done a lot of work, and they brought the bylaw in here, which I think is a big help. So we've had some of the board members there speak to the fact they would like to be on this board to help further that. And Jennifer Sanderson did write us a letter asking to be on there. And she has a lot of ties to the state level with the Chamber of Commerce. So, but Rod and I have had our differences of opinions, and I don't know where John's at on that, but I'm recommending Jennifer Sanderson for the board. And what's your all thoughts?
Well, to say we've had conversation, that's true. It's been my better judgment and experience that when you start a new venture, you start clean. Not to say Jennifer's motives wouldn't be just and helpful to that board, but there's a lot of the old baggage, a lot of the old ways, I don't know if that would cause a problem or not.
Well,
And I have no way of knowing that.
The CBB brings a lot of money to the table. I mean, and with this new tax raise, there's going to be more. And she has been involved in some of the advertising things done. I'm not saying the old way is right, but I'm just thinking some of the stuff still needs to be followed up on that's been done. So I think you're going to have some kind of leadership there to help. I mean, there's contracts and stuff signed out there on these billboards and stuff, but you're going to have to maintain and keep it up until the contract's over. So you got to have somebody there that kind of knows what's going on with that, I feel.
I personally would have no problem with her being on the board.
I think I'm in agreement with Rod on that. Clean slate.
Just my gut feeling. I may be wrong.
Mr. Topliff, what's your thoughts?
Well, there's points on both sides of it, and, with the, Rod's got a good point, and I think there's some city commissioners that feel that way, that we need some fresh blood and some new vision. I'm inclined to agree with them. If those 6 members want to pick one of the previous board members as their 7th member,
It's a good idea. Good thought.
Let them pick one.
It's a good thought.
So this was my suggestion, and there's three of us, so I'm hearing you say no and Rod say no, so that's gonna be a no on her from the county commissioner.
Who else, Ron, who else did you?
Well, the name's already come out, Ben Shears. I think would be good. Yeah, I'll nominate him.
Okay, all second. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Yep.
And then I would like to nominate Jackie Good on the city side. And they having a good business person in there too.
Any concerns? Yeah. JD?
Nope.
Eric?
Nope.
So we have our six.
So we have Amy Cedarstrom, Michelle Stanley, and Ben Shears for the three on the county side.
And we have Jennifer, Howard, Steve West, and Jackie Ryan.
Okay.
So let them pick the seventh, and then they can decide who they're gonna hire for director.
Okay.
So how do we proceed, Mr. Manager?
I can reach out to the 6 applicants.
Okay.
I don't know if we would like to bring them in initially at have city, county, and the 6 applicants go about a next meeting, or we would just like to have them meet independently.
I think we still need, where are we at on a set of bylaws for them to follow?
So, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's my understanding that we appoint the board and then they will work with the attorney to write the bylaws, that we are, once the board's appointed, we're out.
Mm-hmm.
That's my understanding also.
Yes.
I think that was from the initial, the only authority that we will have, that we will retain as far as county and city is in the event that there's disputations within the structure of the board and, we have, and nothing's being done, then we have the authority to recall and replace those boards. The only, other than that, this board is going to be self-governing. They will be running the issues for the chamber, CDB, and economic development. They will be hiring, the applicant, choosing that 7 board member. I would encourage, we have a lot of good names, and I would encourage those who weren't appointed to reach out to that particular board and, address your concerns, with them or your desires and wishes to continue to serve. So that's will be the prerogative, that they will be exercising. But I think that the more simple, in layman's language, that they write those bylaws, the better off they're going to be.
Yep.
So Andrew, I think we're going through budget right now. I mean, you might contemplate, as well as with, the county, as to when it would be good to bring those 6 board members, officially they accept the positions, of course, and officially, introduce them as the new board. That will be, executing the future of CDB, chamber, and economic. You guys agree with that?
Well, I think, the sooner they get this thing launched, the better it'll be for everyone.
Sure. I mean, there's no reason that we can't have a special meeting just to bring them in or bring them in the next time and just, introduce them and get them on board, right?
Right, I think we could bring them in. I think we may need to kind of run some parallel courses here with that new board. There's no reason they can't get started as kind of a board or a work group, working to formalize some things. I do think both entities need to have a meeting with both the city and county attorney. I think they have some questions about the framework, the structure of this organization.
Create the 501c3.
Yeah, well, and I think right now, both entities are kind of struggling with competing ideas that we will have this appointment authority and oversight of the board is in conflict with a 501c3, right? If what we are doing by appointing the board is essentially having another city or county department that we appoint board members to. So if we want to create the 501c3 or 501c6, both entities are going to have to kind of hand over the reins, step back and control.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if we're going to have this oversight over the board, then it needs to be a city or county department. So legal has some questions on that. I think we need to bring them in and kind of have their guidance as far as the structure going forward. But there's no reason the board can't be working on some of these things that will be essential either way in the meantime. I think we're also wondering what the county was looking at funding this organization, so that, again, as we look at 50-50 matching this new organization, what should our contribution be? What should the county's contribution be?
What we're going to obviously have to decide is the new director going to be full-out a county employee, which is going to be a chunk. So we need to discuss that.
Well, either way, if it's a county employee, then you got to think about the benefits that go with it, and that we want money there too. So, I guess we have to work on that in the budgeting, which you guys are right there down too, I think.
I assume the visitor center building would house the new person?
I'm sorry.
The new visitor center building where they're paying, I think the CCV was paying rent before, and we kind of offered them to use that building. That
Oh, yeah.
is that just
We have to talk about that.
And,
that could be some savings. I mean, that's what the intent was, to eventually protect that little stand there for, several thousand visitors or summer, but also to give an off-site place to have a lot of meetings and conversations where people don't want to, their business people looking to come here don't want to have it. That's what Suzanne would always say. Several of those meetings, they don't want to come inside the facility and get the word out before when they're having some conversations. So,
Right.
but that would be, my ideal. We have the facility. There's no reason to pay rent, separately and have all three of those entities right there.
Anything else? Go ahead.
At least we got the board appointed.
Yes, that's a great achievement right there.
Unless somebody doesn't accept.
Yeah. Yeah. You're exactly right.
I'll reach out to the board, the
Okay.
appointed board members, and I'll let both commissions know about the next plan.
All right. Sounds good.
Well, it was my understanding last meeting that the county has 50,000 that we put into economic development plus the CCD money, and all of that money was going back into this thing.
Well, that's correct, but the CBD money.
That's
there's
separate.
certain ways that can be spent.
Yeah, that's provisional.
Right, but you spent some of it on the salary of
I don't know.
the director.
I'm sure you're right, but,
Probably, yeah.
Well, it would be spent more on the salary of the director, so.
correct.
It may have to be a percentage or something if they're doing.
Right, of course, then you enter into that, now the director will be over other entities, so I don't know if we can maybe take the whole
No,
salary.
no, you can't take it all.
That's discussion we're gonna have to have along the way.
No, you can't, but the person, my understanding was the person was gonna be a county employee to, ease the problem of withholding and benefits and whatnot. Is that not our understanding?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that would take care of quite a bit of the issue of hiring the person. Just have to come up with a salary and who they're gonna hire.
Right.
That'll be a phrase to be determined once the board gets together and determines exactly what they're looking for, what the criteria is there.
Yeah, yeah.
Then we can kind of, they can kind of look and see what the salary is, something like that.
Right.
Further that.
Good.
Well, I think you'll see this board probably hit the, like Andy says, they're assertive and aggressive, and I think they'll hit the responsibilities, assertively, and I think they're going to accomplish great things. We still have a few things that we need to, clear off and come to an agreement with. I don't think anything's going to hold us back, but I really appreciate the nominees and their willingness to serve their community from this respective board. I think is probably one of the biggest pieces of achievement that this community has done, and a long time coming for a long time. So I applaud, the county commission and the city commission for their work in this matter. Now, before the county dismisses, I just need to ask a question. Where are we at with the fire department?
Every time we ask it, the answer is we're closed. Whatever that means.
So, we're down on our end. Everything is a go, right?
Right.
Everything's done, it's just the verbiage in that contract, and I think what they said made it complicated was the, if you will, call it a prenuptial agreement, where if the city decides they want out of it in a period of time, what the steps are to get out, and what the substantial responsibility for the fire district is to return equipment or money back to the city to allow them to get back out. And I think that was causing Charles some, it's easy to talk about, but putting it on paper and making sure that it's legally binding, I think is a different issue. But I think we, the commission, thought this should be finished by now, but it's not. So as soon as it's finished, we'll all be happy.
Yeah, I think we started in October of last year, didn't we? Somewhat.
Yeah.
And so it's been a long time. I think, that both county and city are in agreement. I had a conversation with Brian today when I went to see Dr. Roger Marshall today, and, I told him, I said, we really need to get this thing finalized. Is Charles handling it or Brett?
I think Charles has that.
We asked Brett last time, he said he could talk to Charles, so
Okay.
pretty sure Charles got that.
So I appreciate it. You guys just kind of proved it a little bit and see if we can bring closure to this new venture as well.
That would be great.
Right?
And Mayor, I do believe that the county wanted to briefly have a discussion about Second and Kansas, the road extension for the Topside Manor project.
Oh,
I have to go for another appointment, so I'll let you guys handle that.
okay. Thanks, Blair.
You bet.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay. You know what? I like the way you talk.
Email it to you guys. So basically, what we want to talk about, first of all, we want to thank you guys and the community for the Topside Manor project and going forward what we're to do with the new building. So thank you for everybody there. Rod and Andrew, we had a meeting the other day, and they were kind enough to join in and see what we're trying to do with the land and the building and going forward. And Second Street becomes very important to our building. Then that Andrew brought up. Do you ever understand where our building will sit?
Mhm.
The Second Street's on the north side of our building. And one of the concerns is who determines the drainage? Our building or the street? And whoever goes in first is going to determine what segment it goes. It'd be nice if we work together to get drainage to work together as opposed to someone having to do something after the fact. And
Sure.
being the sewer and water to our building would be much easier off of Kansas Street or off of Second Street than Kansas. So, Rod and Andrew had a quick conversation trying to put together that one block of street on Second Street to, put the curb gutter in the street and get drainage correct for both the building and the street. And, I'll let Andrew and Ryan do it.
Well, the long-term goal, obviously, short-term is to get them a nice entrance and exit to their building and get the drainage set. The second part of the deal, we'd like to eventually extend that road out to Highway 27. But there's landowners that Kevin's working with and visiting with. So that may or may not happen. But at least this portion of it, this 600 feet, needs to be done now, I think. If it's going to get done, it better get done now.
This- this-
Parking lot, it's on the back side
Yep.
of that street, and all our truck deliveries come back into the north side off of that street. So
Yeah.
it's very vital to the operation of this building.
That's part of the section that we're granting them the easements.
We would have to, we own all that right away, right there, and then we own the land
Uh-huh.
to the west of it.
And so we're talking about Norfolk Triangle
Mhm.
is what we're referring to.
But yes, it's the same land.
Yeah.
What was the cost that was thrown out in our meeting the other day, Rod? County and city split the cost of curb, gutter, sewer, and water was how much?
The split would be roughly 140,000 per entity.
Yeah, we had a preliminary engineering estimate done that puts that road extension at $280,000.
Mhm.
Okay, and we talked about it, and Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but actually said that we have the money to do that with, is that correct?
That is correct.
So I am willing to entertain a motion to do that. If the city will do their half.
Or do you guys need some time?
Well, it's kind of I think, a discussional item. I mean, we've always been a very workable entity, and I told, Andrew what we need to do to accommodate, the new facility. I'm in favor. I think that, we're going through the budget right now. Andrew, you can elude at any time, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, from a commissioner standpoint, we're going to go that far. It'll be a nice facility. I would encourage, the commission to entertain, the recommendation. Any thoughts that you would?
I just have just a general question. What's the normal process if somebody were to build a building where there's not a street, without going about getting the street built to get to that building?
Well, I think, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of dependent on what the street, is the street intending to be a public street? Is it a private street? If it's a public street, it has to meet city standards. And then, like we've done with various commercial buildings, we've done road extensions and things where we cost share. But if, sometimes if there's residential subdivisions or things like that, cost would be borne by the developer. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
Would it be kind of,
There's also sectors that we incentivize,
Right.
like at the industrial park,
Right.
right? So we've done, so, I feel, that the facility would be, generating, a lot of income. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. So what does the commission think, JD?
We need to do our part.
Yeah. Was this, just not the question, was the cost of road access not part of the plan when you guys made the plan as far as what the total cost of the project was?
And that's where the county stepping up to put money back in on the city project. So, I hope it's a community effort or team effort like this.
I guess we could call this the Second Street Road Project, and then later on, hopefully, the Second Street Road Extension. But we'll see.
That's been a discussion for many years.
It has.
I think our intent on the extension is that that's on county property, or that's in the county, is that we will put that road in. It won't be curbed and guttered property out to the highway. So that cost a month come back to the city, the county would take care of that.
JJ?
My only question is, are any of the city employees gonna be working on like the water lines or anything like that, or is that done by a separate contractor?
No, city staff typically does water line extensions. I think it depends on the elevations, if we can do sewer line extensions. But
So that would be figured in on our side of the contribution.
we would do the work and then we would bill the contractor for work performed. So that's usually.
Gary?
Well, it needs to be done.
So I will entertain a motion to make, include the 140,000 for the curb and guttering to include our half of the 280 that Andrew, to join ventures with the new facility coming in. So I have a motion by Commissioner Brahma. Do I have a second? I have a second by Commissioner Ferris. Any concerns or questions? Mary, read the roll.
Howard.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Ferris.
Yes.
Rumble.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
And I will make a motion of the same for the county.
I'll second it, or to spend $140,000 on, cost sharing on the Second Street extension. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Anything else to discuss, guys? With the county?
I don't believe so.
I think Rod says no, John.
Send a motion to adjourn, Rod?
I make the motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Rod. Thank you, John. We go off the line, guys. You too, bye. All right, we go on to item number 5, consent agenda. Item A, June 15, 20 commission meeting minutes. Item B, June 6, 22nd, 20 special commission meeting minutes. Item C, appropriation ordinances 2020-13, 2020-13A, 2020-P13. Have a motion? Have a motion by Commissioner Howard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Ferris. Any other questions or concerns? Mary, read the roll.
Thompson.
Yes.
Rumble.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Ferris.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so we move on to item number 6. Discussion of fiscal year 2021 budget. When we left here the last meeting, we alluded to the fact that we would have a candid conversation with our employees and with the city commission, and hopefully the commission has had an opportunity to digest the process of what the budget looks like. Hopefully they've been through their budget books and looked if there's any concerns or questions. And so we start the discussion. Andrew, anything that you would like to say before we move into?
Just that Mayor, Commissioners, you all have a handout in front of you. Some of this information was emailed to you last week. There are a couple additions and modifications in there, but that includes information on where we are in our current budget through June, a comparison of the employee benefits funds from 2015 to 2020, and then 2021, with both a 20% increase for health insurance, and then also looking at if that 20% were to go down to a 15% increase, what that would how that would impact the budget, your employee benefits showing kind of the loaded rate of staff, transfers by fund, and then there's kind of a P&L, a revenue and expense listing of the entire city budget. So that should be in front of you all.
Well, I am going to just start off by simply saying that we value and appreciate the employees. There's been some dialogue that has been commenced, and we've listened attentively. You know, one of the things that serving as commissioner, it's a balancing act. We have to put emphasis by measure of appreciation towards those of you guys who do the work and go out there and accomplish the ventures that is set out by the city manager. On the other flip side, you know, we have at least between 45 and 4,600 other constituents, which are called taxpayers, that I'm sure most of our commissioners here listen to some of the concerns that they have. I think there's been some creative thinking that has gone into the discussion that we will have tonight. I don't think that we will arrive at a decision. However, I do anticipate that by commencing the discussions, that will lead, you know, the commission to come to a formal decision in our next budget meeting. I believe this is imperative and important because, you know, sometimes, you know, you as employees, you know, listen to maybe some dialogues that don't truly reflect the image of the commission that is up here. You know, our concerns are you guys as well. However, sometimes, you know, change isn't easy, but change is a constancy that takes place in all our lives. Some we like, some we don't. Having said that, I think that the ultimatum and the prerogative will be placed in your hands. I think that you will listen to some pretty creative thinking. I know that I'm willing to do whatever I need to do as a commissioner to rectify the status quo, but not leave you, I mean, hanging out there. I mean, there will be measures in which we will allude to, express our appreciation, and that content will reflect. So some of the agreement is going to depend on you. With that being said, I'd like to open the discussion, and I'm going to start off with JD. JD has served as, you know, commissioner for, this will be his third year, and I respect his input and value his opinions, and as I do, you know, Ferris and JJ and Aaron. But I think that you will listen carefully to all of the presentations that will be made. Some, you know, one of those plans should kind of encapsulate what we're trying to accomplish here. JJ?
Yeah, thank you. So I've had some, well, past couple of years sitting up here and seeing how, learning for one thing, and then just seeing the trend lines and how the trend lines are going with, you know, the current healthcare and the cost that the city's taking on. And it's always been a concern because it's a big number, and the big number impacts everything else we do. as far as every other line item that goes in all these line items in this budget. And you know, I think the history of the city for a long, long time has been to basically maybe not be as competitive on the pay side and make it up for it on the benefit side, and that's trended and worked out in the past, I guess, because there's been people that have been here for a long time and stayed around. And the problem, I think, over the past, I don't know how many years, at least, you know, in the last 5 years, that, you know, seeing there's a $250,000 difference now from 5 years ago in the cost of health insurance that we're having to take on. And so the problem is that the health insurance has outpaced, the rise in health care costs has outpaced wage increases. And I said when I came on, you know, 2 years ago to the commission, and I started going through the process and learning what it is to be up here and make decisions, that looking at the budget and line items, that my red line for any plan basically in the health insurance is to the point where we have to raise taxes to try to keep funding the thing, and at the cost of other line items that aren't getting funded appropriately, and it's delaying, and it's putting us behind, whether it's infrastructure or whatever it is, you name it. And I think we were there close the first year I was on. We probably were there last year, and but I continued. We seemed to find a way, but I don't think it was probably the best way forward. This year is more apparent than ever because we're trying to take money from you guys and take the new evaluation revenue that's been that we received, which is an increase, to try to support the budget. I don't like taking money from you guys to support the health care, and I don't like taking money from other line items for roads or whatever to try to that suffers, you know. So I think I'm not a fan of what was presented, the 48-cent raise. I'm not a fan of the 4% cost or to you, but I think it just makes it real evident that the health insurance at over $1 million now presented, basically whether you help out or not, is unsustainable for the future and for a lot of reasons that we just learned about in the prior meeting with the Joint Commission, meeting with the county commissioners. And so, so what do we do? Is going forward, how can we reconcile being fair? I have absolutely zero problem paying better than anyone around the area and being for that, whether it's Colby or whoever. You know, competitive pay is not a problem for me. You get what you pay for, and we've been lax in that area, especially on the starting salary for any position here. Basically, a lot of the ones that we've been advertising for, including the police department. I think all of those need to be bolstered, and I think part of the problem is because we've been trying to support a plan that everyone seems to like, but on the flip side of it, it's the very plan that's hurting us the most to try to be competitive and keep the pay where we need to do. And so we fall behind on pay. So my goal in all of this is try to be fair to all the employees, try to be fair for the taxpayer, but try to have something that's sustainable. There's really nothing like anybody else has, whether it's the college or the school or the hospital. Even has a plan even close to what the city's offering for you guys right now. It's unheard of, and that's why it's unsustainable with the cost of health care. So we got to find a new way forward. My goal in thinking through this and trying to find some answers is, if you're getting paid this much, you know, a portion of that is your whole salary benefit package. Portion of it's made of benefits and portion of it's made of wages. Right now, we're out of line with even common business practices. How much of that portion is structured in benefits or health insurance? We're way, way high on that end. I want to keep it between the lines, so to speak, but I want to flip it. I want to increase the wages, but we got back off on the health care because we can't afford it. And going forward, we can sustain it longer, and we don't have to budget 15 and 20% hits every time we turn around to try to make that happen. And so, trying to kick around in my own mind where I stand with it is I've always felt that the singles, when I say singles, the people taking single insurance have really, in essence, been taking the biggest hit because they've been kind of subsidizing us trying to fund the spouse and the child, the next level up, or even the family plan, because that is so large and expensive. That's us trying to do that has hurt us, what we can give out in raises, and ultimately hurt everybody, but especially I think those on the single, because there's about, whether it's $7,000 on the single side or $20,000 that it costs us for the benefit on the family side. That's a $13,000 benefit that some are getting that others aren't. I have a hard time reconciling that myself. And so I've thought about throwing around a couple ideas. I don't have an answer. I just have some ideas. I've had some ideas the last couple of years that didn't go anywhere, and that's fine. But we'll roll on. So split the difference. So everybody gets 12 or 13,000 worth of benefits, and you choose how to use it. If you're at a single rate right now, the difference is minus some taxes that we have to hold back. You get the difference in wages, the wage increase. The flip side of it on the family side is the one that hurts. We got about 25 last count, thereabouts, that are on that. But what makes me feel better about that, the majority of those people have other options. And we have some people that are even considering a secondary insurance as opposed to their primary because their spouse is taking plans other places. We can't absorb those costs anymore. Those spouses need to be taken, if they're able to take their other plan. That will help us out tremendously. And I'm willing to give back a good portion of that in increased wages to make up the difference in my mind. I have no problem with that. Right now, between the family plan and the child or spouse plan, there's about $7,000 difference each level. You go up 7, 13, 20, whether it's single, the middle plan, or the family plan. So just by not having even the family plan, that saves the taxpayer, the city, about $175,000. If we did comparable things to what the college does, or what the school system does, or what the hospital does, and only offered a single plan at 100%, no out of pocket for you, but just a single plan, we're over $500,000 in savings for what? So we're talking a lot of money. Mills upon mills upon mills, where we fought over $33,000 one mill before for a long time for nothing. So 2 ideas. I won't stretch this out any longer. I'm just letting you feel where my heart is and my head is, and trying to reconcile the two here with you. So one idea is that everyone would get the same. Do with it what you wish. Some may come out ahead if they have an alternative. The ones that hurt me, or if the ones that don't have a spouse that's working, I haven't reconciled that in my mind. They don't have an option. I think we're on a 2-year plan to do something. I don't think we do anything drastic just in 1 year. I think it's going to take 2 years to get there, and it gives everyone time to adjust, gives us time to budget for stuff, and to roll this out. Another plan, another alternative that I came up with, just trying to think through this, was, this year there wasn't any, basically you're giving back the raise that you were getting in the cost of insurance, okay? I didn't like that. I think everyone, just for being on another year, is deserving of an increase every year. Nothing stays the same. And for your loyalty staying on, I think I'm one that would like to see and advocated for a raise. Now, you have to compromise sometimes, and they haven't been great in the past, but there's been movement. There's a lot of places that you don't get raises for several years. So at least there was something there. But an alternative to that, the first plan I just mentioned was to start off with, it'd be $1 raise across the board for everybody. That would help us. I think one of the problems we have is entry-level pay is poor. We need to bolster that up from where it's been. So that would help us there. And in the first year on a 2-year plan, the family plan won't be funded any longer. We won't budget for a family plan. Anyone that has a family plan now will automatically at least go down one step with their spouse or their children. They'll have to decide. But in doing that, we give another $1.50 increase. So that'd be basically $2.50 wage increase. Okay? On top of where you're at right now, to make up some of that difference. If you wanted to go clear down to a single, that'd be another $1.50, so that'd be $1.50, $1.50, that's $3 plus a $1 raise, so you basically a $4 bump if you went. Now, how can we do that? I just told you went from, that's 4 times 2080 is a full-time salary, it's $8,000. What we're saving, the city is saving from $20,000 down to $7,000, $13,000. We got to make some of that up in capers, Social Security, and taxes, so we can't return it all. I'm trying to get you as whole as we can. The singles I was talking about, the ones that are currently, the first year, let me back up, the first year, so that could happen. The ones in the middle that are have a spouse or child on, one or the other, they'd just stay the same. They get a $1 raise, stay right where they're at for this next year. The singles, they've saved us a lot of money by taking it, but we've cost them raises in the past because we're trying to increase and support the whole big massive plan for the others. And so they get the $1 raise and they play us to get $1.50. So basically they get $2.50 raise one time. Okay. So basically our starting pay would be around $15 for any entry level position. More for other areas. So we wouldn't be advertising probably less than $15. Okay. Because they still save us money. So that helps one problem as far as finding people to hire. The thing that's hurt us in the past is trying to fund the big plan. While in the last few years, especially Walmart's paying more, John Deere's paying more, all these people are paying more, and we haven't been able to stay competitive. So that gives us a bump. We get back competitive when those individuals get a decent raise in a single plan that they aren't paying for, no out of pocket. Okay. So year 2, we get rid of the middle plan in the same thing. Whatever the raise is there, there'll be another $1.50 on top of whatever the raise is for those people that maybe didn't move. So by 2 years into this, everyone will be on a single plan, and if you add with generous raises to try to make up for it, and then everyone at that point on, we'd be like all the other places for good reason why they've done this, is to you'd have to pay, out of pocket for your child, for your spouse, or whatever. But those are that's some of the numbers I did, up to 17% increase over 2 years to try to help out to spread the gap. That's a long-winded answer, but I've thought about this a lot. So, and I think I'm trying to be as fair to both the taxpayer and for the employee. And I think those are some pretty significant raises. I like to see the spreadsheet that you sent out with their current wage. I did a couple examples, and at the end of the day, you got the full benefit wage, hourly wage with all in. I did a couple examples, taking out capers and their taxes and we stayed darn near close on the couple examples I ran out myself, but I'd like to dig into it a little more and maybe have you introduce some examples just to see if I'm right on that, because we need to know the cost. So I'm not looking to rob the bank here and for for these first 2 years for the city to walk away with a bunch of savings. I'm trying to make this whole, make this right, and get us on a correct path that's sustainable going forward, but to be very competitive for you all, for the work you do. So that's all I got. Take that in.
Good presentation. Good presentation. So, Garrett, what do you?
Well, we gotta do something. I'm not happy with the outfit we got handling the insurance either. I think we need to get the bids and figures and see what's out there. It's not a free ride. We all gotta pay for insurance in our lifetime.
So I will allude to one of my proposals. And I've given it a lot of thought. And I know that I hear a lot of people talk about Colby and so you've got this aggressive, assertive, side, they pay 70% to an employee. And then if you want your spouse and your children insured, you would have to pay for it. However, I would still compromise that. I would only say that for the first year, the city would pay 75%. It's still under what Colby is doing. And then you would pay for your spouse and for your children. If you do the math, that's an extreme proposal, providing that the commission would approve that. But to me, that would accelerate your wages tremendously. I think one of the things that concerns me is that, as JD alluded to, is that change is here and it's not, going away. I can assure you that by putting off a decision, in 2 years, those insurance costs will accelerate, which at the end would be more costly to you, and certainly more costly to the municipality, because we're already, in the hole. In the last 2 years, we have shaved off close to $1.7 million in infrastructure in order to balance the budget. And so I think it's one option, and that you guys can think about. I think it's more than fair when we're willing to compete with a municipality of that magnitude. At that point, would turn it over to JJ.
Okay. Well, insurance is a hard subject. It eats at me both ways. I know how important insurance is if you don't have it. And making the employees with a family not have insurance, if something bad was to happen, that eats at me in here. Because once you have something bad happen to you, you look at life a lot different. My proposal would be keep it the same, and at time for insurance quotes, get a quote on higher deductibles, which should take the premium down, but keep everybody insured right now, full coverage for the whole family and everything, and then come up with a better plan than so we're not shocking the employees, you guys, down the road, and give you a raise to help out with that. But given a raise, you still, to give you $1 raise, it's gonna cost the city, what, $1.17 an hour, something like that, pretty close with the extra taxes that we have to pay. So if that's why I don't like it, making you guys pay for insurance and giving you guys a raise, because in the long run, it costs the city more money. So now I'm in favor of just riding it out for one more year, getting more insurance quotes, keeping, as long as they're apples for apples, getting quotes for a $500 deductible, $750 deductible, $1,000 deductible, and see where that takes us. Right now, we're lost without knowing what insurance is going to cost us. But you guys are important to the people of the city. You guys take care of the roads, power, water, the parks and everything. And we need to keep you guys happy. Happy employees work better. So that's mine. Keep it the same. Don't make the employees pay anything this year, and see if the budget or the deductibles, when we raise the deductibles, if that lowers us to get us to where we need to be. But keep you guys happy with full insurance.
Could you
Go ahead, quick question for Andrew, maybe. Any changes to the current plan if they are able to, we lose the grandfather clause, is that accurate or not? Any, if they moved it to $1,000, then we're off the grandfather?
So we are grandfathered as long as there's not a 5% or greater change in the employer's contribution. So if we required over 5% employee, if we changed the benefit by 5%, we would lose the grandfathered status.
So for deductibles though?
Yes, yep. So if we change deductibles to higher deductibles or anything like that, yeah, the grandfathered status is lost.
But we need to look at that. If we can still get a plan out the door that's apples for apples with a little bit of a higher deductible that costs us less money and not being grandfathered in, why not do that? That's just good business, and this is a business. You guys are all our employees. This is a business. I mean, out at my shop, I look at new insurance every 3 to 4 years because it is cheaper to go back to somebody else with the same, everything the same that's covered as this guy that's charging $1,000 a month for liability insurance. I can go back, clear back here to $600 a month and start over and have the same coverage. Why not do that?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing at all. I just want to make sure that that's the understanding. We don't, in the current plan we have, if we do any adjustments to, we're looking at a new plan then.
Right, essentially outside of essentially what I proposed, like a 4% contribution stays grandfathered. You go above that 5% figure, then yes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, JJ, that we need to be all options on the table. I think we've had one option, several options with the same thing we've been looking at, same coverage. And I like to see a variety of options.
Right, and keep it apples for apples for what they get. Maybe the deductibles go up, but they're still covered for everything and they're not having to pay anything. Except for a deductible.
And I think that's the, and you can be on either side of the fence on that deal, either, then we're right back where we're relying on the insurance for their pay, or we give them, and there's not a right or wrong, I guess, everyone's got their own opinion, but, or you pay them more, for them to decide what they want to do with it, or you keep it, it's kind of status quo, even though if we can find a lesser plan, it's costing, and have more choices.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, the only way you're gonna reduce, I mean, this is kind of a double-edged sword, it's still gonna affect the employees. If the employees truly are what we hold of value in the best interest, why would you want to give them the best plan possible for them? I'll give you an example. The moment you step outside that 5%, you've lost the grandfather clause, and it's going to affect. And the only way to make a difference in the numbers is simply by increasing that deductible to a point where it's going to make a significant difference in the changes. I mean, you can't have both sides to it. Now, you make a debate that it doesn't cost any money. I'd like to just challenge you a little bit in
Raising the deductible, $250 to $700 deductible, or $750, figured at 280 hours, or 2,080 hours, what, 50 cents?
I don't know. Yeah.
So you give your employee, go ahead and give them, everybody across the board, a 50-cent raise. They deserve it anyway.
Well, yeah, but I mean, how are you going to keep that 95? I mean, you're going to get out of it.
No, you're going to get out of it. That's why I said we need different plans. If we get out of the grandfather clause and it's still the exact same plan, everybody's got the same coverage, but we're not in that cost-sharing plan, and we got the same coverage for everybody, and we keep it full coverage for everybody on the staff. By going to an ungrandfathered plan, that's just good business, in my sense. And I gave an example of the liability insurance. Because they're comfortable, insurance companies are comfortable with giving you a good deal the first year. It goes up consecutive for 3 or 4 years. That's why you look for a different company to go back and start over where you were at and come back forward and up. And the grandfather might still be the best plan. We don't know, because we haven't looked at any of these other plans. We don't know.
That's what I've been saying for 2 years. We still don't have a true comparison what it's actually costing us.
Well,
Exactly. But
your point has been that they always come back with a 95.
the same thing.
95.5.
Same thing.
95.5, 95.5.
So we don't know what it's truly costing us. So compared to what like the school has or the college has or whatever, it'd be nice to know that number.
Well, commissioners did receive, we did have a non-grandfathered plan in our renewal in December. That was, we had a side-by-side, here's our grandfathered plan, here's the equivalent non-grandfathered plan. I think it was a difference of $5,000 or something, savings to go non-grandfathered. Now, the
But
plan.
it was the same coverage, same
And
levels.
the non-grandfathered, the coverage does change. Well, the deductibles and everything does change with that. So there was kind of a minute savings. Is one thing to always keep in mind with the grandfather plan is it costs us money, but it also saves us money on the prescription drug side of things. Because the prescription drug coverage we will have to provide when we go non-grandfathered. I mean, that will become the major cost center of our health insurance plan once we go grandfather. So,
That's why I said apples to apples.
right.
They need to come with that figured in to what their quote will be.
Aaron, what do you think?
All right, my mindset has been kind of the same as JJ's over there. I mean, a lot of numbers, a lot of things I've been throwing at you guys right now, and I kind of feel like maybe you guys should take some time over the next couple of weeks to kind of think about it all too. I like the idea of, at least for another year, keep things the way they are, but at the same time, that's going to affect getting any kind of a significant raise. JD's over here talking about, you know, you guys paying more on your insurance, but getting very significant raises over the next couple of years. So, I mean, I guess, you know, for me personally, if I was looking at that, just from the numbers, I think JD's would probably be the better plan in the long run. But, you know, having all your insurance covered is pretty good too, and depending on what happens in your life in a particular year, that can more than offset the cost of any big wages increase that you can get. So, I mean, I feel like we're not very much in agreement up here. You know, I think we're all looking at trying to come up with, make the numbers for wages and insurance equal out so that they end up the same. But at the same time, I mean, at the, you know, $150,000 increase or whatever we may be looking at this year, you know, we also just spent 30 seconds earlier discussing spending $140,000 on a road that we agreed upon doing, which I'm not so sure that was the best decision. It's a decision that we made, but, you know, I don't know how we can spend so much time discussing the same amount of money over this with not putting any thought at all a little bit ago into spending that amount of money on something else.
Of course, that's, you know, on a different subject, but I agree.
Yeah.
I'm with you that the commission should have been notified, you know, in advance, to have given opportunity to discuss it, you know.
Yeah. And we didn't have to make that decision today.
It is, you know, some of the things that we need to definitely improve. I have no problem with JD's plan. You know, I like it. However, if you're looking at numbers, I think mine's extremely generous. I think that if I were on that side, that'd be the one that I would take. But I'm just, you know, that's just something that you have to digest. So.
Do any of you guys have any thoughts you'd like to share regarding the insurance at this time, beyond any conversations that we've already had? Go ahead, Chris.
Sure.
I'll have you take a microphone, Chris.
Right. No.
So myself, Terry Smith, and Kim Keith, we were able to meet with most of the commissioners. So, thank you for being available for that. Obviously, you know, we don't get a seat at the table, and you're making these decisions that are challenging. That, you know, I think John had mentioned the tension, right? You have to, you got, you know, a community that we're trying to move forward with and to do what's right by them. But then on the other hand, you know, you have employees. I guess it's not a simple solution. I think that we would all agree to that. And so the thing that I'm thankful for is a dialogue. I think being able to communicate. You know, we live in a tumultuous time, right, in our nation. And I think that the biggest problem is communication, is dialogue, is being able to be, you know, we don't have to agree, and we don't have to see it the same way, but I would say this, that being able to meet with you commissioners, my perspective shifted just a little bit, because I was able to be objective and take myself out of my own head and my own understanding, and not my selfishness, right? Like I'm a man, I have a family that depends upon me. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And so, we recognize that tension, but we have got to be able to communicate. And so I guess my biggest question is how do we do it, right? How do we do that? And I personally would love the opportunity to be able to work through that together, because I work with some great men and women, just brilliant. And the conversation and the dialogue that we have from that perspective is of great value. And so I would like that. And I don't know what that looks like, but I think that if we could partner together in the cause, I feel like that would be a great benefit. We are the hands and feet of the city. We get it done. And you know, we take that direction from the top down, but at the end of the day, that's what we are. We're the hands and feet. And so I think that you recognize that. But we got to work that out, because without hands and feet, we're doing nothing. And we all want what's best for the city of Goodland. There's no doubting that. And I don't think that any of us doubt that from you guys. I think it's easy to feel like a line item, which stinks, but at the same time, that's a tension we got to manage. But I think that we need to be able to partner together, and that's going to be more productive. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
I really thank you for those comments. And I appreciate the fact that I think you're absolutely 100% on target, that this mission has to be communicated and it has to work, and we don't want to rush into any decision. I was just looking at the numbers here, JD. Actually, if you go to, at the lower end, we have 3 employees that, are at $13 and some cents. So they would be closer automatically to $16. And so, I mean, that's a pretty significant raise. And of course, as you escalate, as you went through those numbers, I think that you can see, as Aaron alluded to, that the impact would be significant. But I too like the dialogue, because we have to have it. And so it's just a question of crunching the numbers and getting back together again, and trying to have further discussion. Andrew, I'm not quite so sure that you have the next meeting scheduled for the 20th.
Yes.
I don't know that, that's, let's see, 2 weeks from today. I guess that would work, but we have to have a decision to the county by the 4th of August?
So the budget has to be certified by August 15th, which means the hearing has to be no later than, budget has to be certified by August 25th, which means we have to have a public hearing no later than August 15th. So for us to approve the budget at our regular meeting, August 3rd, we would have to have the budget finalized by that July 20th meeting. Now, if we want to go later into August, we can do that. We can have additional special meetings, but we won't be able to approve it at August 3rd, which means we would then have to have an additional special meeting to approve the budget and have the budget hearing.
Any other concerns or questions for Andrew?
I'd just like to have one size, seems like one size has to fit all. That's what's bugged me the last couple of years too, and I've offered options in the past of trying to give employees options. I would love to have options to choose from. Maybe you like more coverage, great, here's this plan. Maybe you like a little less coverage and you want more wages, great, you take this plan. It'd be nice because what we currently do is just like, okay, well, however your family makeup is or whatever, this is kind of what you get. And I would love going forward for people to have their family, their them to have options between different plans. Some of the younger ones, they probably don't even use the thing, you know? But yet, we're spending all this money on it that they aren't even using it. Or we could, if we want to spend all this money on it, we could bolster their wages and they'd be far ahead. They should be able to have that choice to make for themselves. I don't like the one-size-fits-all option. So I'll try again this year.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate your.
I agree with you, JD. I think that's one of the biggest criticisms, I guess, of the grandfathered plan is that it does kind of limit our ability to think outside the box, to be able to provide different options to employees. I don't think, at least in my discussion with staff, that they are opposed to going non-grandfathered. I think we've had this discussion for 3 years now. I think staff is kind of aware that there will come a time when non-grandfathered and, you know, we have some things that we'll have to work out. I think there is a level of understanding there. I think what's tough about this discussion is that we are letting the budget, we are using the budget to drive policy instead of using policy, instead of reflecting policy in our budget. We've had a long discussion this evening and all we've talked about is health insurance plans. We haven't actually talked about budget figures or different budgetary impacts. We talked about health insurance plans and different ways to craft that health insurance plan. And that is not something that I don't think we want to do in a budget meeting and that we want to stay here until midnight and figure out the right health insurance plan in a day. I think that is a years-long process. And so when we talk about, you know, we need to look, if we want to have some drastic restructuring of health insurance, I don't know that necessarily all of staff is opposed to some of the ideas that are being presented here. And not that I'm opposed to some of the ideas that are presented here. I think what's tough is having them all come out in one night and then here's your new health insurance plan. And it doesn't feel like we've kind of engaged all the people who are impacted. So that's why in this budget, you know, I put the 4% employee contribution. I think that's a reasonable contribution, whether the commission wants to, you know, revert that to 100% and not change anything or stick with the 4%. But I think it would be a mistake on all of our parts if we changed the health insurance benefit as part of this process instead of saying, look, we've had several discussions, we've thought this out, we've crunched the numbers, we've put different plans together. Those are things we need to be doing now for the next year, not doing now for the budget, you know? So I just caution this commission from taking drastic actions suddenly and not having that thought out kind of longer process to changing the health insurance benefits. And I think those changes probably will have to come, but we should do them because we thought them through, saw all sides of the lantern and came to a decision, not because we have a budget deadline that we have to pass, and so cut or not cut is on the table.
I agree with what you're saying, Andrew, and I think one of the things that I was sensitive to when the group came to talk to me is that sometimes by not making a decision, we create upheaval because they're at rest. It's kind of like a doctor, you know, going into the doctor and the doctor not wanting to tell you what's significantly wrong with you. But before we can arrive and give them those options, the commission has to make a decision. Because, I mean, if we don't make a decision, we don't know what kind of a proposal to bring to them, or if we bring in Meritain, or we bring in Longcoffer, or we bring, you know, other representatives to give us a quote, they can't give us a quote until we decide, hey, here's what we're proposing. So the employees themselves, you know, also understand. Having said that, you know, let's look at the numbers. And so I went back and looked at some figures for the 2020 budget, we had 51 employees, right? And so the number was $757,634.04. However, in the numbers that you just presented to us, the insurance ends up at, if I can find my paper here, at $748,000, right? According to the figures that you just handed to us, employee benefits 2020. I've got it right here. So if you take the health insurance, it totals up to $748,277.96. So, and that was with 51 employees. So, in the 2021 budget, we're looking at reducing 2 family members. One was the late Mrs. Suzanne, the other one was Williamson. Rich is going to be retiring. Joyce is going to be retiring. And we had an individual who was included by the name of Devon Yarbrough, who was included in these numbers at $748,000. So that shaves off $60,000 off that $748,000, leaving us right at $668,000. So I don't understand. And the other thing that I want to, and I want to read this to the employees. You know, one of the things that the commission wasn't brought a fairly. I went back and spent a lot of time and looked at this, and if you, of course, you don't have access to it, but I'm going to read you something. It says this was the budget from March to February 28th, which reflects the numbers that I just talked about. But if you go to this book, which was presented to the commission, there's a section there that says PIC recommendation, which is Mrs. Fernandez, right? That's who runs the agency. So if you go back, something that was never mentioned to the commission at that time, and I'm going to read this comment. This was her recommendation. She says, the current self-funding arrangement has been financially beneficial to the city in the prior 3 years by saving $139,000. PIC recommendation, she requires, at that time she was requiring that employees pay 5% of the monthly premium for the city to keep up with medical inflation. It is important to have employees contribute to the cost of a health plan. 5% allows the city to stay grandfathered while engaging employees in the cost of the health plan. That was never mentioned to the convention. I mean, a decision was made in December that she said it has to be made today. So I don't understand. I mean, the numbers don't jive to me. I mean, if you want to talk numbers, let's talk numbers. We're at $668,000, and that's not to mention that if Brian gets hired by the county, that particular, number goes down. And those figures don't lie.
One of the questions I had was, and I think it just goes to prove how much of a dead end we're coming with on how much we're spending. This is, we're dropping off 3.5 positions, and then we should be able to save some on the ED budget from where we were at prior to, as you were working through all those figures and be able to drop those numbers off. I guess that's quite a bit of money there. As far as where was it ending up, and where was it kind of in my mind, okay, 3.5 positions and the rest of the ED budget that we aren't going to fund our part for the joint venture with the county. That's a pretty good chunk of money. So where did that get displaced to?
Like some of that went to the airport. Then we added almost 30,000
That was
towards the
26.
Yeah.
Yeah, the commission did have $50,000 in new requests, or the $30,000 for the chip seal, and then the $26,000 for the airport. So that was a significant portion of it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the total amount was, but it seemed like it was double or triple that. So just general increases, I guess, that we have to do across, across the whole budget to support it, because evaluations weren't supporting
Right.
all the
Yeah,
increases.
our valuation saw about 50,000 increase if we held the mill levy at the same level as the previous year. So then we had the 55,000 of new expenses, and then the rest of it was just putting back some equipment that had been cut out of previous budgets, and some of those infrastructure projects that had been cut out of previous budgets, putting those expenses back.
I guess it just seems like pretty significant, reduction in positions, and it just kind of goes away quickly, is a thought. But
Well, and some of those, one position was general fund and water, right? So Rich's position, so you don't necessarily see that reflected in the mill levy. Employees that are earning $13, $14, $15 an hour, when you cut those positions, it doesn't have the drastic budget impact you might think it does.
When am I thinking about those position changes? And two, I think one thing that I want to encourage, and I don't know if we can find a way forward here on those people that are left to head those departments with Rich's retirement. Anytime, we can be more efficient, but as people take on extra responsibility, I think their pay should be reflected above and beyond any raise as well. So I'm finding more ways to spend the money already, but just I don't know if that's been in this discussions, but I think
Actually, there is additional compensation for those three employees built in for them stepping into de facto department head roles, so above and beyond that 48%.
very good.
I guess a question I have for commissioners are, as we look at that 15%, we've typically done the 15% health insurance increase. Do commissioners still feel like the 20%, we budgeted 20% so that we can get a 16-month contract to get us to a July 1 renewal? What is commission feedback on? Do you feel like that is important, that changing that date is important, or would you be fine with?
On that same idea, kind of a sidestep on that real quick. This last year, when you budgeted 15%, the increase ended up being 11.5%, if I recall. What happens to the rest of that 15% that didn't get spent?
Sure. So the city is self-insured. We have a self-insured health plan, which means that the city has exposure and liability to pay certain claims up to a certain point. The city pays claims up to a $30,000 stop loss cap, right? So anything above and beyond that is covered by the health insurance provider. So when there is budgeted increase that doesn't go in, when we budgeted 15%, it only becomes 11. That stays in the reserve fund to help pay claims. A little bit of history is that the city used to be self-insured many years ago, and then Blue Cross actually dropped. They said your plan is too small. We're not doing self-insured plans for cities of your size anymore. You're going to have to go fully insured. So the city the city's been through this process before, looking back at the history. The city went self-insured, and they had a pretty robust reserve fund built up. the commission at that time basically took those reserves and put them in different funds and spent that money. So when we went back to the self-insured plan, the city had to build up its reserve account in that fund again. So we are in year 4, and 2021 would be year 5 of what we had talked about of building our reserve fund back up. So after you have built that reserve fund back up, and then you get kind of a renewal, and okay, well, it's only a 3%, you know, maybe the city will just take those funds out. You know, you have a little more leeway once you've built your reserves up. And so we're on a 5-year track to do that. 2021 is that year 5 of that plan. But in those previous years where we have had that increase, or we haven't had that increase all the way to the 15%, it's basically just stayed in that fund to help pay claims.
And how much is in there now? Roughly?
I probably can't. 139. Yeah. Let me see here.
At the current time, it's 328 as of the end of June.
328,000.
And the plan is to get it to what amount?
I think we would like to get it to 500,000, but you know, we definitely want to get it north of 400,000.
So Andrew has a question on the table of whether we want to go back to the March 1st or leave it for the 16 months. My recommendation, and I've talked to Andrew, that, you know, we take it back to the 1st of March because that still gives us and a lot of time, you know, to make decisions on our, I mean, we would be talking insurance in August or September. I know sometimes, you know, we start talking about, well, the numbers aren't there yet, but at least, you know, once you make a decision, you can start talking to different people before March 1st to say, hey, here's what your insurance plan is, what it would cost the employees, here's what it would cost. At that time, you know, they can go out and shop rather than pay the additional 15 or 20% for 4 months. You know, I alluded to the fact and told Andrew the other day, I said, you know, you look at our budget, look at the discussion, which Andrew presented, you know, very eloquently and made a point. I mean, we've got more to deal with here during budget season rather than to take, you know, on an additional burden to discuss, you know, insurance. What do you think, Jacob?
About the March date? Well, I'm still kind of frustrated that Blue Cross is dictating to us. You know, I would have liked to have had it not to go a year and a half in advance to get it lined up where we know what we're talking about and know all the numbers up front, because here we are again, we're guessing. We have no idea what the increase is going to be, and so I'm torn that way, frustrated with that part of it, but I don't want to spring anything on anybody either. I want people to be able to you know, have time to adjust for whatever the roadmap entails, but we're sitting here talking about something that we don't even have comparisons for either. So it's hard to decide on a number when we don't know what we're talking about. But here we are again, another year. And that's the frustrating part for me, and we try to get that fixed, but we were told what we were going to get from Blue Cross again. They're just steering the ship.
Yeah.
So
well, and it's hard for insurance agents. It's just as frustrating because they can work until you give them the numbers. Yeah, that's why I say that one of the things that I appreciate about the representatives is that I understand how they feel. You can't keep them, guessing. What do you think? And don't you think it's reasonable to meet it in March? I mean,
Yes, I mean, it would be however the commissioners feel about it. I think it would be something we would like to work to if we feel like this is not the year to do it. I mean, I understand those constraints. It would be a good thing to reach, but if we're looking for ways that we can cut costs, we can say, this is not the year to do that. And I do have a breakdown of those different numbers on page 2 in your handout packet, but I think it just depends on where commissioners want, what we're prioritizing.
I guess it comes back to, we need to come up with a number, what the number we're gonna fund, and whatever the plan is, we aren't deciding on the plan, we're deciding on what we're gonna, how much we're gonna fund it to. No?
I'm sorry, could you say that again, JD?
So, I mean, for budget purposes, we need a number.
Right.
For insurance purposes, that comes at a later date, but we're just deciding on what the number is.
Right.
So, we aren't picking a plan right now, but it goes into thinking of where we want to go and where we've been and what we have to look forward to arrive at, a good number, what that amounts to, but that's what makes it tough because we have no bids or quotes to
So the
go off
20%
of.
increase was for a longer term?
Yes.
Year and a
Last
half.
year, we looked at, with our renewal, we looked at doing the longer term, and it came back as, okay, we're going to take on 4 more months of your plan. There's uncertainty associated with that, so you're going to see an increase with a longer contract. So yes, that 20% is in anticipation of a 16-month contract as opposed to a 12.
that's why Andrew is saying that he doesn't thinking through the numbers, that it's a wise move to make.
I mean, I kind of think, especially if we're going to try to expand that and get more quotes from more insurance providers, we may be better off this year sticking with a 12-month plan. We get a better chance of getting a bigger variety of quotes from different providers doing that.
We got time to work on it that way.
So if we did do the extra 4 months, it'd be back, 15 then?
It would be 15, yes. That's what we budget annually for a 12-month increase.
So, just throwing out this, because our prior CEO, year and a half ago, was trying to get, there's different ways to do it, was trying to get the county, trying to get the school, trying to get the city, at least the vision was there, to get us all on the same, working together to consolidate, have bigger numbers, to be able to go out and get the best deal for everybody. There's other options. Is there any other entities that we could look, thinking out of the box again? Of course that'd be a big deal, but there's some thoughts and some advantages to that.
Doesn't the school do something like that with other schools in a big group? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they're able to get better rates, right, Terry? I mean, by
We got a board, there's like 7 other people that are on it. They're able to go to Blue Cross Blue Shield and talk to them directly and be able to get the best thing they can.
Is any other cities doing that together? League of Municipalities or anything, or?
I'm trying to remember, we did quote a captive plan in the last years. You know, again, Rhonda, she presented a bunch of different quotes that included a captive plan and different plan options. The captive plan was really high, and I can't remember exactly why. I think it's kind of new for municipalities to be able to engage in a captive plan, but I think some of that is loosening. I think that is something that we want to do and something that we want to work towards, is figuring out how can we do a captive plan. And if it's a captive plan with other municipalities, or if it's you get on a captive plan with other entities in Goodland, you know, I think that's something that would be beneficial for us to look into, for sure. But that was something we looked at last year. I think it came in hundreds of thousands of dollars higher than our current plan. So, but you know, again, that's trying to get back and think to the health insurance discussion and all the things that went into that.
So one of the big concerns that the employees had too was, I got a couple years doing it now, and you guys are first year doing it, but kind of repeating the steps I was in too. So we're kind of extending the pain, sort of thing. But one of the complaints was, can we just have a plan and a notice and what's going to happen? And instead of this being on the chopping block, was, I'm quoting somebody, I forget who it was, every year. So I want to be respectful of those opinions too, and not go down that road again without a plan for them to understand where we're at and fully understood the frustration there too. So sometimes the choice just gets made regardless, without any input in some entities, but it just happens. But trying to listen and take note of that too. So I think that's important for them. So I don't, are we doing that again? You know what I'm saying? If we go about it this way, just throw that out there.
Aaron,
Yeah.
I think we need to give Andrew Jordan, you want to make that a motion? So, or to go back to the 12 month, to take the marks as, you know, what we have, instead of going to the extension of 4 months of July. That's what we've been talking about, prior to his comments. Well, we can give a consensus direction, and that's what the consensus is, right?
Just a direction is all it needs.
All right. So you got your direction there, Andrew. I guess, you know, getting back into the budget, you know, I've heard, you know, from different, I know that there was some other concerns, JJ, that you had on the budget, you know.
Well, the first one, I don't understand, and it's small things, it really is. Phone bills. Why is the pool get $2,000 for phone and like the museum gets $1,500?
That's a Josh question, he splits that out based upon the lines.
Yeah, but how many lines are going to the pool?
Currently 4,
Why so many?
because I have 4 phones.
Yeah, but everybody usually carries a cell phone.
Do you want the city paying for everybody that's carrying a cell phone at the pool?
Well, I mean, I'm talking about not employees, you know, because who uses
guess-
all them phones?
I think he's asking, do we need 4 lines available at the pool?
That's just how it's been. I mean, we can cut it back, we can change things up.
Because how
It's
often
just
are all 4
not
lines?
been- The other
used?
part of that $2,000, the actual phone itself is actually relatively small, is the fact that since we have done the new network layout, you have fiber cost that is split up between every single department. You have equipment for every single department that is also included in those fees. So it's not just phone. It's phone, internet, equipment, things of that nature that we have leased from people.
What makes it a little bit more to understand is instead of just telephone.
It used to be that way, and then when we switched and went to the current service, that's when we changed the balance.
But we've also, we've got the funding for the IT in every department too, so.
That's for different type of equipment. That's for our equipment, not equipment that is wasted from somebody else. Because even though we may have an Eagle provided switch in every location, I don't have any access to it to dedicate, hey, I need these 4 ports for security cameras, or whatever the case may be. I'm allotted this many for phones, and then I get 1 port off of it to go into another switch.
All right. Then moving like into the electrical budget. Equipment wise, I've heard other municipalities say that we're the best place to buy used equipment on the electrical side. I think we could probably go ahead and stretch that, buying those new trucks out further than what we are doing right at the moment, and lessening the amount of the money going into the MERP. Is that the right one?
Certainly.
Yeah.
The MERP,
It would be Murph.
municipal electric equipment.
I know. To me, they have a lot of hours on them, they don't have miles. And usually hours on a motor doesn't hurt the vehicle.
Just on that, how is the decision usually made when it's time to replace a vehicle out there?
When I started, it was about a 7-year rotation. We've moved to the 10-year rotation. Previous commissions have tried to extend that. We had a near-death accident out at the Holiday Inn Express before it was built. At that point, John, I think you're on the commission. Safety became priority. It's not so much the miles or the hours, it's the electrical integrity of the booms. It's a lot of stuff. And when you say our city is the best department to buy vehicles from, it's because my crew takes extreme pride in the stuff that we are getting.
So, in the same theory on that is, the truck could be 2 years old and it could still have an electrical failure.
Yeah. But that would be also a warranty issue.
So you gotta look at that thing the same way. I mean, I come from a farming background, and you use all your equipment to the fullest you can at the time.
Is that always the safest though?
But that still depends on the working crew. You should have to run safety checks on everything to start with.
Yeah, and we do thoroughly.
Right, and I appreciate that.
When your power's out, you want the truck not to run that day?
I can't see this. Is this
Me, sir.
Oh,
No group do. I'm just putting it out there. If we're worried about these, we already have so many issues with their older bucket truck that Levi's and Bridger Tower's working on. There's nights, power's out, but we're yelling at them because the power's not on yet. So you also have to consider that fact of how long do we want to wait for the power to get back on because the truck is broke. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Just putting these, I'm throwing them out there.
Well, we have tried to stretch, and we have, but it comes to a point to where 13 years on a truck, that's a long, long time. And in farming, and what we do are two different beasts. You put a guy in the air and you're having him work on 13,800 volts, and we're running a tractor. I don't see that. I don't see it.
I understand that. You put a guy on a pivot that's got 440, he can die the exact same way.
Yeah.
You reach into a contractor box, you reach in to pull a fuse.
And that's why these guys have to be trained.
I know. My dad was about killed when pulling a fuse in. I know about that. Reaching into a fuse box to pull a fuse.
these guys do a lot more than just that.
And I know that, and I said I respect that.
I respect that.
I'm just looking at different ways.
Well, I think that's your job.
Right.
Is to do that, so, no, I appreciate it.
And I'll give feedback both ways,
Yeah,
good and bad.
yeah, and I appreciate it. I'm just trying to show you from 30 years of experience, it's not just all about hours and stuff like that, so.
Even, you know, it's like the street department, if they got tools that'll make their job easier, sure do. There's tools that make your job easier, sure. If it saves time, it saves money to go somewhere else. And that's good with every department.
I've had a question, Sean, about conversation we had about crazy positions during this time. You know, I've thought a lot about it. There's two departments that have never, you know, one is Danny. I think Danny is understaffed. I think he needs, you know, I also know that Gus needs, because you're trying to hire one, right?
We've been trying to hire one in the plant for about a year.
Yeah. But, you know, there's been some discussion about that. I don't know, I think, kind of, we agree with the fact that person position, you know, in the COVID-19. What's the commission's thing about that issue?
That's a question for Dustin. So have you, any applicants, is it the wages, is it, what is it? Is it that's, or just trying to get people out in this area, or was the wage the problem?
Wages are an issue. I think trying to find the right guy for the job. You know, I don't think just putting a body in a position is the best thing. Sometimes hiring one bad guy is like losing two good guys, and so you don't want that.
Right.
You have a good chemistry plan right now.
Sometimes no hire is better than a bad hire. Yeah.
And you know, I'm relying a lot on Chris, you know, because Chris runs my crew at the plant, and you know, I'm sitting in on interviews, I'm doing stuff like that, but we haven't had, and we had a couple of decent applicants, but I don't think one that we felt that was the guy that we needed to hire. That power plant and line crew, I mean, they're both electrical, but they're two different beasts. I mean, you got production and distribution. And we tried to cross-train several years ago and tried to take guys from the line crew and put them in the plant. You can't do that. You just, I don't think there's too much going through these guys already, and you throw something else on them, and it's just like, especially for what we're getting paid, and it won't be long before they're looking for different employment. That didn't work. We tried it for, I don't know, Chris, what, 8 months? Maybe about a year, and it was just, it wasn't going anywhere.
Yes, so what's your starting wage?
That power plant line crew is $15 an hour. 15,
Yeah.
unless you have like some line college, like Ty or Chase, and some of these guys, then we got them in at 16. That's 2 years of education.
Yeah, I think that needs to definitely in this conversation in this law. I believe that needs to be compensated a little more, you know.
You have to have good credentials.
Yeah, you know, so that might be something that we can look at, in order to be able, you know, to attract people. It's kind of like your starting salary. You know, like I said, I mean, you know, that you can bring that up to almost $16 by your plan. But anyway, so those are my thoughts.
Excuse me. On the other hand, I have brought forth the apprentice programs and stuff like that, and you guys have been generous enough to allow those. So these guys are doing extra training and getting paid on top of it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we've had problems. We can't really hire from the outside and bring in people coming to sponge off my crew, Midwest Energy and Sunflower and stuff like that. So we're having to grow our own line. And so that's where the compensation is.
Sure.
And we're trying to keep you here and go.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, yeah, that's good. Anyway, back to this, stuff, what do you guys, JD, what do you think about positions? I mean, I know at one time there had been some discussion towards that. For freezing, positions.
Oh, well, the only thought, if we were gonna move forward with whether we keep it the same or try to go off in a different direction with the different, the way we look at benefits and pay and stuff. If we were gonna make a change, I just think it'd be wise, any new person that would be brought on would be brought on at where we're at least in some of the couple things I proposed in a year or two, and not get them involved in the grandfather issue, just to try to have to pull it back again if something happens. I think they need to be on the new scale, wherever that is, with in the proposal. One of the proposals I had on the single payer, but at a higher wage, instead of getting them in the mix of all this all of a sudden again. Just a thought. I don't know if it's the right thing, but I think it's kind of, it's kind of a little bait and switch. We're gonna bring you on with this and that and the other, then we're having all these discussions, so it's a little awkward timing.
I don't know if you can do that. That would be probably a consultant question as to whether a new employee can be brought on at a different plan. My suspicion would be if you bring on a new employee with benefits that are non-grandfathered, that you then change the grandfather plan, and then all of staff becomes.
Well, it could be the grandfather just wouldn't offer them the whole deal, but if they had a family or whatever, but they'd be at a higher wage to make up for it, like we're trying to get. Just a thought. I just think it's kind of crazy to bring someone on and then they get. I don't know what's going to happen, but if they get switched right away, then that's kind of like, well, I was planning on this, but I mean, that makes it tough to hire when we're sitting here
And I think that's why.
talking about this, so we need to go one way or the other, probably.
Well, and that's why, again, I can't emphasize enough, this whole process, if we're going to change benefits, it needs to be exactly that. It needs to be a process. It doesn't need to be, it needs to be something that when we bring someone on, we say, hey, look, your benefits are going to change at such and such date because we've got a plan in place. We know when the benefits are going to change and have planned for that, not just kind of shotgun it, like you said.
Yeah. So does the guy table new hires until the insurance, at least till December, and we make a choice?
Dustin's been tabling for a year.
Well, I guess I'm confused. Commissioners were just saying that Danny's understaffed. He's short a guy, so should he be frozen?
I think you might have misunderstood the question. At one time, we had a little bit of fact about patrol officer coming on. Do we hire or do we freeze? That was my question, not necessarily go back into the direction of insurance, because I agree with Andrew. I think
those two,
those, you would have my 100% support and blessing, to bring those, employees on, and at a higher rate, too, but I was talking about, freezing about the new, like, did you at one time discuss, or do we freeze the hiring of a new police officer?
Well, what's the difference between any of those other positions that?
Yeah,
I guess what's the difference on any of the other positions that I saw in the paper, that we know about?
Right, I don't know either.
Just a question, that I know had been brought up. And that's what we're doing, discussing budget.
I mean, I can't think of any reason to freeze hiring a position that we have an current open position for.
Putting a hiring freeze on never did stop from the hiring before.
We have some really good police officers. and then we have some police officers. Okay? There's some that have promoted a bad image around town. Get hit up every day, you talk to some people about what are you gonna do with those employees? And then you go out and you see, something happen out by the interstate, and you've got the highway patrol, you've got the sheriffs out there, and you've got the cops out there, the police department, for an accident. Are really all of them needed out there to deal with that two-car accident? Jonathan? Right, and I don't know, I just,
That's absolutely right.
yeah, and,
Mhm. Mhm.
and there shouldn't be nobody by themselves. Your job, electrician's job, is electrician is taught to always have two people on site on electrician. Just in case somebody's getting electrocuted, they can break them away from the circuit. It's the same thing, guys, with you. Because how many officers are there now? Well, yeah. I don't personally, but I can envision. Right.
Mhm. Sure. That's absolutely true. And I still stand by it.
So
And I
why
still-
wasn't there somebody on, why wasn't the chief filling in for something like that maybe?
Yeah, what? Oh. So, it's been brought to my attention that one of them only stays out till 2 o'clock in the morning, and then the other one's by himself? Is that true? Yeah.
But the chief's good with us, so that kind of helps both shifts, day shift and the night shift. But then again, I don't want to take vacation with my guys. I'm not taking away from anybody else. I'm sure, Levi, I see him doing stuff other than mechanic and stuff. He's packed full. That guy works his ass off. Excuse my language. But he does. He gets pulled in different directions and everywhere else. And I'm sure, Justin, you're the same way. I'm sure he's short. I'm sure everybody's short. But where do we stop at safety or pulling employees? Where do you stop? We don't have any money. I know that there's a budget, but where do you stop at? Do you stop at safety, or do you stop at, cutting people or whatever, saving money? how do we get more money into Sherman County and the city of Goodland is what we need to be focusing on. What can we build out there where we can get more revenue? What you guys have done that's great, because they're probably gonna bring some stuff in.
Yeah. Well, there's no proven history about the fact that our valuation, keeps going up and up. And we're not stagnant in any different area. I mean, I don't know where people would get that concept. I mean, you've got, an $8 million hotel going up there. You got 24/7, building up. I know that there's some economic development that, that I can't vote that's in the process. So we're not stagnant community by any sense of imagination. But we're going to get there by what we just heard tonight, because we're a farming community, right? Land goes down, everything gets hit. My question is going to be, how many officers patrol during the day? Just one? Okay.
There's a day shift patrol officer. I'm also out during the day. We have a swing shift from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. We have a night shift from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I will come out anytime that I need it, and I do. I also take calls for officers while they're on breaks, so they get their breaks. I work 50, 55 hours a week. I get paid for 40.
Any other? Jake, any questions on the budget? One of the questions that I had, I went through the budget book and there's several marks to look at. I was trying to figure out, I couldn't make the figures work out, and one was, so I came in and saw Andrew and asked him, hey, figures aren't coinciding here. The way, I calculate, sometimes you're using the actual 2020 budget figures, and sometimes you're going to the revised figures. So I guess my question was, how do we determine when we use the revised budget versus when we use the actual budget?
Sure, so I can answer that. We build each fiscal year on its own. So we calibrate the budget to fix the need of that year. There is a difference between the approved budget and the administration of the budget, as you can see. So the commission authorizes expenditures, but when you get unforeseen circumstances in the middle of the year, for example, a global pandemic that you don't know the outcomes on, we'll revise those numbers down and say, whoa, we're not comfortable with spending this money right now. We're going to put off these projects. We're going to put off these transfers. We're not going to do this right now because we don't quite know the impacts of what we're dealing with. And I think what commissioners have in front of them and what we've kind of said these last couple of meetings is we're weathering the COVID storm really well. We're actually not seeing hardly any impacts from it. Our sales tax is up, our utilities are all doing very well. So we feel confident saying, okay, we're going to put for 2021, we're going to budget accordingly based on what we're seeing. Now, if we get into 2021 and something happens, that's what you pay Mary and I for. That's what we do. We don't just set the budget and let it run. We're monitoring it every day. We're making changes to it every day. So those cuts that we made at the time were cuts such as, okay, what do we need to cut to absolutely get by functioning, right? To absolutely say, and I think more and more what we're hearing from departments is we weren't functioning, we were going under, right? When we went to the split shifts, when we went to all this work that, tons of stuff is getting put off that we're still recovering from to this day. So in sum, the budget is always a communication between department heads and management. We sit down and say, okay, and a lot of times the cuts that we do in this budget year just make that line item all the more important the next year, right? We didn't do this year. We didn't do that this year, so that means we need to put that back next year. Otherwise, we're going to be so far behind in what we're doing at the city level. So It's a complicated process, and it's a mixture of what can we cut, and then what do we really need to accomplish in 2021.
You asked for a P&L. Any questions on the P&L that you?
Well, I think P&L's, I think it looks pretty decent, really.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard.
What are we gonna end up at, like a 16.4 million dollars?
Yes, I think I tallied that number in here. Yes, it's under 15.
Just under 50.
Yep, there it is, 14.9, or 14.6 in expenditures. And that is on this page of the P&L.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions, guys?
Do commissioners feel that we need to schedule an additional budget workshop between now and July 20th? Do we feel confident that we will have resolution on the budget at the next meeting?
I don't know that we'll have resolution, but I think we could probably go to the 20th, and if we get through that date and feel like we need to schedule another one for the next week or something, we can do it then.
Okay.
I concur.
I agree.
I'm okay with it.
Salaries for water production, it's way down for 2021. Is that because of shortage of employees?
That is because that's where Public Works Director Rich, he is paid half out of street and alley and half out of that. So when that position is eliminated, that's where that cut comes out of.
But that's figured in the compensation for the director of the water department then to raise up a little?
Yes.
So the other departments would be the same way then?
Yes, correct.
So on the transfers, Andrew, we're looking at $2,369,955, according to what you said.
Yes.
Probably under water, does that include the 125,000 that we're transferring out of the water on page 3? Transfer from water utility, 125,000, is that included in here?
Oh, for the franchise fee? Yes, that is included.
we're doing 100% coverage on the insurance. We're not doing the 4%. So what's the commission want to do for a raise for the employees? Because they deserve something.
I think my explanation was long-winded enough, so. I'm kind of sticking to that. I probably won't be for a family 100% plan this year. So, but in lieu of, to bolster up, to make it up as much as we can on the wage, we gotta start getting away from it, to be more, it's more traditional, and I've explained all that, so I'm just repeating myself, but, I'm open to ideas of how we can make that work. For this first go round, but that's kind of where I'm landing.
I guess it's always the age-old question, you do a specific dollar amount raise across the board, or you do a percentage raise per position, per person. And I think I've always been a fan of like 2 to 3% cost of living type raises, but I don't have the figures as to what that would be dollar amount for the whole city and what that would affect the budget numbers. I think until we actually get kind of revise the numbers based on the changes we've kind of proposed, it's kind of hard to say exactly what kind of a raise, but I mean, I think decent raises are always justified, if for nothing else, just to keep up with the cost of living.
So let me explain the second. I had another proposal that I had kind of thought about, which is I think could be beneficial. My second proposal wouldn't affect people like Chris, whose wife is staying at home. That would still, I thought about it if we project this over the next 2 years and we do only 10% for the first year. So currently, if you're under a family, that would only cost you $665 a plan, a month. We could up the deductible a little bit, but as I think, as JD had said, if you have a spouse whose insurance is being offered in a place of employment, I would think it would be to the advantage of the employee to recommend, that insurance be taken by the employer who's offering that plan, because it's not costing them anything. So the only one that would be affected, do you have any idea what the percentage of because I mean, it's like JD, the hit is at that family deal, but it wouldn't affect people like Chris or anybody else whose wife isn't working. They would still retain a full coverage family, but it will only, cost them 10%. We would have to change the deductible a little bit, But, given the state of affairs, almost 50 million people out of work is, you got people, cutting. And so I want to be fair to the employees is my, I want to be fair. So I think that if, some way we could find that would then lower the insurance premium. Not drastically, but, I think that's a good plan. It doesn't affect, most of the people who have non-working jobs. So I think that's an option, that could be considered. and they wouldn't take a very big hit, there either.
So, and I'm just asking this, what is the difference between Chris, whose spouse doesn't work, and then another employee whose spouse works, but they would have to pay for insurance if they took it at that place?
What I'm saying
I'm
is.
just trying to figure
Well,
that out.
Sure, and I'll give you a perfect, explanation. So right now, if we have spouses working for the hospital, and we have spouses working for the college, and we have, different people working for different organizations, in essence, those places already budget to pay their insurance. Why would they take it?
Correct, I agree with you there. But there are some who don't work at those places whose employer doesn't pay for the insurance. I think they would fall into the same.
Oh, sure. No, I agree with that 100%. I agree, I think that they would fall underneath there. I mean, if they're not, being provided insurance, I would have no issue. I think it's a plan that makes, the employee child, would be, very, very minimal. Because what we got right now is the insurance is costing us almost 19.8, almost 19.9 for families. It's costing us right at 13 for employee spouse. It's costing us $67.85 for the single and $12.94 for employee child. But so I would be okay with leaving those who aren't being insured still on that plan.
Then that would go back to like what JD was talking about earlier, about compensating those that are single, those that have families. If you're going to hold one at this level, you got to hold them all at that level. So if you hold Chris's family here, then you got to hold Levi's family here. You can't just hold them all at different levels.
I guess I don't quite understand.
So if you have one wife that's staying at home, and then you have a wife that's working that doesn't have it, you got to compensate Levi's family the same way as you would compensate Chris's family.
Well, under this plan, they would get their spouse would get paid. There's no difference. I mean, if the employer isn't offering insurance, I'm saying then we would keep them, under the family. So there's no difference there. You got 25 families, and you got 10 employees that got employee spouses. You got 11 families that are singles, and then you got 3 employee child, which would be the category that you would fall. So, just a thought.
I don't think anybody's opposed to changing or making an employee pay some insurance. I think that's gonna happen eventually. Everybody knows that, with the world going through what's going through.
Sure.
I think everybody's just a little bit in awe about the shock of doing it right this very second. And I'm not saying they change some or even a little bit or all of it, but I mean, it's just the initial shock of doing it right now as opposed to, I mean, we've had quotes before, haven't we? When we went to the computer and we did all that, I mean, what happened to all those quotes?
Just to clarify, there's not any changes being made to the insurance plan right now. I mean, it's kind of been the main focus of the discussion, because that was the main concern that was brought to us by the employees about what was going on with the budget. All we can do right now is determine how much money we're set aside to spend on it, and then at the end of this year, figure out how we're going to allocate that money with whatever plans come about, which is kind of what all these different discussions will be really had at that point.
I think that's been a big thing for a lot of us, especially for myself. After the year that I've had with my daughter, it's been security, We're talking about how to pay in. You're talking about raises. I guarantee you the medical bills that my insurance has covered for me in the last year is by far more than you guys could ever give me for a raise. So we're talking, my daughter had a $60,000 surgery, insurance covered. So we're talking about security. I mean, what, 36,000, 54,000 if you add my insurance onto it? And here, we're talking $50-some thousand surgery, my insurance covered.
Yeah, I mean, there's no argument that insurance is priceless when you need it. I've had a couple surgeries over the last couple of years. I couldn't imagine paying those bills without my insurance. I mean, everybody who's ever had an issue understands the importance of insurance, sure.
Wait until you don't have insurance. If you have something happen to you, that's a whole different ball. And that is really, really hard for them to come back to that.
One thing to get outside of the grandfather clause, what a lot more options is we haven't talked about is what it doesn't allow us is HSAs and stuff and different options there. We could, if there's a $1,000 deductible, we could, there's no reason why if we had a different plan, whatever it was, that we kick in the $1,000 in the HSA to cover that deductible. I mean, it just allows for more options, more pliable for everybody to choose their own destiny a little bit more. So that, we haven't really touched on that, but I think Terry, one year we had talked about that a little bit, if that's an option or not. But so just throwing that out.
So any other concerns that you want to discuss on budget with me? Well, I want to thank you very much for your candid discussions with us, as well as the commission, bringing forth their ideas. We look forward to meeting again on the 20th. And, you know, like, this is all hypothetical until we decide, you know, how we're going to proceed. At that time, then that's when we're going to get the numbers. You can't get the numbers by speculating. We have to make a decision for the sake of the employees. And that's all that, you know, that I'm pushing. I think we've got some fair plans, you know, out there. Something that you guys can mull over. And then we'll further discussion on the 20th. Yep. But I think that, you know, we can't keep putting off a decision. I think that creates a lot of unrest with the employees. With all that being said, any other thoughts? None, I'm going to take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion by Ron, a second.
Did you write everything? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting, that's right, we still got the report.
Come on, guys, the most exciting part of the meeting. City manager.
You can do it that.
No, the only things I was going to say, our street project, they're pouring on in front of the 24/7 this week, the driveway widening. Reminder, we have a rezoning public hearing at our next meeting on July 20th. Our auditor is scheduled to be at the August 3rd meeting to present the city's annual audit and audit findings. On Tuesday, June 30th, we did replace the media at the water treatment plant. We did do that successfully. We had the Scott City Water Department actually come down and assist us with that. And they, you know, it was a really beneficial thing all around. And then I'd just like to provide an update on 4th of July activity. We did have 35 citizen complaints regarding firework matters from July 1st through July 5th. Had 35 complaints. We had no citations for any of those complaints. Typically, you know, someone gives us a call, PD goes and investigates it, gives them a warning, and as you can see in this case, that resolved all complaints. So,
is that higher or average or?
I don't have previous year data.
Just curious. This one.
They didn't get my complaint.
You were 36.
But all things considered, 4th of July went well as far as enforcement goes. So I would stand for any questions from commissioners. You have any?
Scott City, the crew that came up here, I think we need to give them a shout back, do something for them, because they came up here on their dime, and they saved us a lot of money.
That's kind of on a, go back and forth, do something for us, but I agree with you. We're gonna talk to Andrew about whatever, and then we'll have stuff we want to do. But yeah, we're going to do it.
Yeah, we'd love to recognize them for what they did. Camaraderie, Northwest Kansas, we promote that.
Okay, Commissioner, is that all right?
Yes.
So we start at the Commissioner's report, JD.
I'm done.
Aaron.
I think we're all feeling about that way by now. Nothing for me.
I would just like to thank all the employees for what you do, truly, from the bottom of my heart. If you guys weren't here, we wouldn't be here. We need you guys. It goes out to all departments, everything. I appreciate what you do.
I agree.
Thank you, JD. Well, the only thing I have is 24/7, and you've kind of expounded on that already, Andrew, so thanks for that. Now, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll read it.
Again.
Who seconded? Aaron, did you?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Did you call my people?
Who?